Chapter 1156. Orus San Jian Chen had already arrived in front of the saint's fruit. With a flip of his hand, a supreme quality jade box appeared, and without any hesitation, he extended it toward the saint's fruit. Jian Chen is a person of the Chongyang clan. A member of the Chongyang clan has already approached the fruit. Everyone be careful. The Chongyang clan is colluding with the foreigners. Many people discovered Jian Chen, who had already approached the fruit and was about to pick it. They immediately cried out in exasperation before attacking even harder. They did everything they could to finish off the vengeful spirits they were fighting so they could go and take the saint's fruit. The great elders of the Chongyang clan had all rejoiced. Jian Chen's appearance had completely surprised them. They knew that Jian Chen was connected to Rue Jin and the others, but they never thought the relationship would be so deep, where the three of them were actually willing to help him obtain the fruit. Fantastic! This is fantastic! The saint's fruit belongs to our Chongyang clan. Chongyang Qingjueri was ecstatic. He seemed to have seen that a saint emperor would soon appear in the Chongyang clan. The other great elders were the same. They showed no doubt in Jian Chen's abilities from their excitement. Jian Chen's actions pushed the battle to a climax. Everyone used 120% of their power so the fruit would not end up with someone else. They all traveled in the fruit's direction as they became blinded by greed. However, when the saint's fruit was about to fall into Jian Chen's jade box, another formation silently appeared. It formed a light screen around the fruit and protected it. A gleam of stern light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes. He immediately drew his emperor armament and began attacking the formation, but it was extremely powerful. He could not shake it even with his full strength. Both the humans and vengeful spirits had sustained great casualties. Several dozen saint kings had already become heavily injured, and 3 saint kings below the 3rd heavenly layer had already passed away. Their souls had been wiped out by the vengeful spirits and all the vitality within them had been sucked away. The vengeful spirits also suffered great casualties. Many vengeful spirits collapsed plenty of times, and over 10 of them had turned into a dense black mist, no longer able to reform. On the other side, Tianjin currently fought against Gustis with the 5 veterans of Mercenary City, who were at the end of their lives, and 2 saint kings at great perfection from the protector clans. As the strongest saint emperor in ancient times, Gustis was terrifying even as a vengeful spirit. It took the combined force of 8 saint kings at great perfection to merely stop him, and they had even vaguely fallen to a disadvantage. The 5 veterans of Mercenary City and the 2 saint kings at great perfection from the protector clans immediately began to panic when they saw that the saint's fruit was about to be taken. This vengeful spirit is just too powerful. If we keep fighting like this, victory won't be determined even after 3 whole days and nights. We can't continue like this. Quickly use the final trump card to finish off these vengeful spirits and then take the saint's fruit. A saint king from a protector clan yelled as he fought against Gustis. With a flip of his hand, a scorching ball of light appeared. A brutal flaming hot presence of supreme yang permeated the surroundings. With a wave of his hand, he immediately threw the light in his hands toward Gustis like rain. Only then could the light be seen properly. It came from extremely tiny particles of sand, and each particle radiated with a burning golden light. The sand actually possessed the essence of the sun. As the sand touched Gustis, it appeared just like sparks landing in a vat of alcohol. Gustis actually caught fire and his rapidly weakened. Don't hold back everyone, or none of us will be getting the saint's fruit. Use the Orus sand to deal with the vengeful spirits. Someone called out from a group. He was a great elder from the Tyrant's Blade School. A few great elders from different protector clans hesitated when they heard the cry, but they soon made up their minds. With a flip of their hand, a similar ball of burning light immediately appeared as well. The essence of pure, supreme yang appeared. A burning ball of light appeared in the hands of the ancestors from the ancient clans as well. They then reluctantly let it scatter into the vengeful spirits. The Orus sand was an item invented by past saint emperors specifically for dealing with the vengeful spirits. They used meteorites as a material, grinding them into the consistency of sand before placing it in a location extremely close to the sun. They were only created after being refined by the flames of the sun for 1,000 years, and every single particle of sand had absorbed 1,000 years' worth of the sun's flames. They were filled with the essence of the sun and were items of supreme yang. They just happened to be the bane of the vengeful spirits. Even the protector clans possessed an extremely small amount of the Orus sand. They were their final trump cards to deal with the vengeful spirits, and they would never be used so easily unless they absolutely needed to use them. This was because the sand could not be refined easily. Only Saint Emperors possessed the ability to get close to the sun, and a powerful formation that could resist the impact of the sun's fire needed to be set up so that the sand could move with the sun. This was not something any old Saint Emperor could achieve. The ancient clans in possession of this sand were all powerful existences that once had Saint Emperors. Light scattered through the air, and the vengeful spirits immediately began to burn as soon as they came in contact with the light. The flames caused them to rapidly weaken. The human experts were originally in a disadvantageous position, but the situation changed as soon as the sand appeared. Instead, the vengeful spirits became suppressed. The vengeful spirits began to retreat in defeat. A few saint kings at great perfection abandoned their opponents and quickly flew toward the fruit. Gusties had been greatly weakened by the sand, and had retreated already. The 5 veterans from Mercenary City were free now, and they all looked at the fruit. Their eyes burned with a desire to own it, and they flew toward it in unison. Following them were the 2 other saint kings at great perfection who fought Gusties with them. Wait, Jian Chen possesses a very deep connection with our Mercenary City, and his talent is extremely great. What you are doing will only ruin our relationship. Tian Jian appeared before the 5 people from Mercenary City and obstructed them. The 5 old men did not waver because of this at all. One of them huskily replied, "Grand Elder, the 5 of us don't care about whatever connection you have with Jian Chen. We only know that once we obtain the saint's fruit, one of us will be able to become a saint emperor and let Mercenary City become even more glorious." Chapter 1157. A Powerful Existence. 1. The 5 old men from Mercenary City charged at Jian Chen in unison. Although Tian Jian was the Grand Elder of Mercenary City, he was unable to stop them. The 5 of them possessed a special status in Mercenary City, and were even older than Tian Jian. They were his seniors, in other words. The situation of the vengeful spirits was disastrous. The Orus sand posed too great of a threat to them. Once they came into contact with the sand, they would catch on fire immediately. They could not put out the flames at all, which caused their strength to rapidly weaken. Many vengeful spirits had retreated already, and some of them had even been beaten to the point where they could no longer recondense their bodies. They were greatly injured. Jian Chen was completely panic-stricken in front of the saint's fruit right now. It was surrounded by a powerful formation at level he could not break through. Zi-ing, Qing Sua, is there any way to break through this formation? Jian Chen sought help from the sword spirits. Master, this is a closed formation. There is no way in or out, so the only method to get through it is by destroying it with supreme force, Qing Sua said in Jian Chen's head. Beside him, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu fought as hard as they could. Not only did they block vengeful spirits, even some human saint kings had become their enemies. Spatial gravity. Suddenly, someone yelled out. A great elder from a protector clan used an ancient secret technique from far away, which caused the gravity around Rui Jin and the others to skyrocket. The 3 of them all slightly sank. At that moment, they felt like they had become over 1,000 times heavier, which had even caused the ground below them to sink. Even Jian Chen was affected. A gleam of stern light flashed through Rui Jin's eyes. With a deep call, the sacred dragon's sword struck the space while glowing with a dazzling golden light. It caused the space there to violently shake, breaking through the ancient secret technique with supreme strength. As soon as the ancient secret technique was broken, a vast pressure descended from the sky again. There were saint kings casting saint-tier battle skills, and the number of them had reached over 30. Rui Jin flung out his hand and 18 palm-sized banners suddenly appeared. Every single banner shone with a hazy, golden light. Through the light, the banners could be seen covered in inscriptions and strands of powerful energy radiated from within. The 18 banners arranged themselves in the empty air and began to shine with a blinding light. The rays of light weaved together, actually forming a faint barrier of energy to protect them. The saint-tier battle skills were used at the same time. Over 30 tremendous ripples of energy erupted and the extremely powerful attacks landed on the golden barrier almost at the same time, causing the barrier to violently shake. The barrier was not destroyed, but over 20 vengeful spirits who were attacking it were reduced to dark mist by the saint-tier battle skills. Swish! The golden light disappeared with a flash. Rui Jin knew that Jian Chen could not break through the formation protecting the fruit, so he stabbed at the formation with his sword. The formation around the fruit violently shook, but it stabilized once again. Rui Jin's attack, which was no weaker than a blow from a Saint Emperor, was actually not enough to break through it. "Let's break through this formation together," Yu growled. The origin energy weapon in his hand began to shine with a blinding white light as a mysterious and powerful origin energy coiled around the surface. Afterward, he struck the formation in unison with Xueqi. Xueqi and Yu were both extremely careful. Although the origin energy weapons possessed tremendous strength, they could control it. As they swung down, they did not target the fruit, but the formation around it. They were afraid that they would destroy the fruit with even the slightest carelessness. The formation protecting the fruit was far more powerful than they had imagined. It did not shatter after withstanding the joint attack, and instead, it just trembled even more heavily. Again! Yu roared out as a vast presence exploded from him. His clothes and long hair danced about despite the absence of wind, while the machete in his hand emitted an even more dazzling light. He struck the formation once again along with Xueqi's sword. This time, the formation finally shattered as it gave in. Without any hesitation, Jian Chen used the jade body to carefully collect the saint's fruit, before grabbing the 9 leaves as well. He stored the box away carefully. Jian Chen immediately exhaled a deep breath after he did all that. He gently rubbed his space ring as joy filled him inside. He had finally obtained the fruit as he had wished after so much effort. The barren, small tree quickly began to wither now that the fruit and 9 leaves had been removed. It shriveled up in the blink of an eye before disappearing into the earth. Boom! With a deafening rumble, the 18 small banners finally shattered from the violent attacks by the human Saint Kings and vengeful spirits. A great group of Saint Kings aggressively charged toward Jian Chen. "Hand over the saint's fruit," many Saint Kings roared. They all seemed to have been peeved by the fact that Jian Chen had taken the saint's fruit, all falling into a rage. They could no longer bother with anything else. The enticement of the saint's fruit was just far too great. It was so great that even ancient clans dared to offend protector clans to obtain it because this was their only chance to have a clan member become a saint emperor. Chapter 1158. A Powerful Existence. 2. A devastating golden sword Qi suddenly appeared. As a streak of light, it chopped through the air and traveled with an unstoppable force. The 100-meter-long sword Qi enveloped all the human experts who were charging over, causing them to pale. At the same time, a huge silver blade of light shot through the air with lightning-like speed, chopping towards the human experts in another area. The surrounding temperature quickly rose as terrifying waves of heat shot out. Roaring white flames suddenly leaped into existence, forming a terrifying wall of fire in the air. Countless experts were afraid of getting close to it. They all feared it. Xueqi, Hong Lian, and Yu attacked in unison. They faced enemies from all directions. With their origin energy weapons, they formed a tight defense, keeping countless Saint Kings at bay. Although the Saint Kings were not as powerful as the vengeful spirits, they possessed intelligence. They knew how to work with one another, and they knew many ancient secret techniques and saint-tier battle skills. It was no easier to face them than the vengeful spirits. Faced up against Xueqi and Yu's attacks, all the Saint Kings immediately began to work together with a tacit understanding. They all sent their attacks at the sword Qi and blade of light in unison. There were no Saint Emperors among the human experts, but attacks from several dozen Saint Kings, or even 100, were no weaker than one from a Saint Emperor. It even seemed to surpass the attack of a Saint Emperor. Even if Saint Emperors were present, all they could do was dodge. With 2 deafening booms, Xueqi and Yu's attacks from the origin energy weapons were blocked by all the Saint Kings. The origin energy weapons were powerful, but Saint Emperors could block them. The Saint Emperors would only become heavily injured if they were wounded by the origin energy. The human experts' confidence grew after blocking Xueqi and Yu's attacks. The fear within them was reduced as they all rushed forward. However, no one dared to touch Hong Lian's wall of fire, all deterring around it. There were fewer and fewer vengeful spirits now. The Aurous Sand was very effective, bringing a radical change to the situation and killing off many vengeful spirits. It consumed all of the spirits' energy so that they could no longer recondense, reduced to a dense, dark mist in the death nest. Only after countless years would they be able to recondense. Of course, a small portion of vengeful spirits had run away and avoided the disaster. The vengeful spirits were invulnerable in the death nest. Hong Lian, release the killing formation. Xueqi called out before immediately pulling out the formation he had prepared earlier. He tossed it out, and it activated in the air. radiating with powerful ripples of energy, the space in a radius of 1,000 meters distorted. Supreme experts that are well versed with poison have secretly poisoned me. They've actually planted it directly into my body. What great skills, Yu explained in a heavy voice. His face had already darkened while the blood at the corner of his lips had turned black. Surprised, Jian Chen immediately arrived beside Yu. He used the Saint artifact to cover himself as he injected a strand of radiant Saint Force origin energy into Yu. Yu waved his hand and said, "It's not a problem. The poison's extremely powerful, but my body is no ordinary body. I can suppress it for a few days." Jian Chen also knew that right now was not the time to cure Yu from his poison. He said, "Senior Yu, when we leave here, I'll use the origin energy of Radiant Saint Force to completely cure you of the poison." Near the back of all the people, the 5 old men who had cast the poison stood up at the same time. One of them said to the 5 veterans from Mercenary City nearby, "We've already used the poison of Heaven's End to heavily injure one of them. It's about time you 5 get moving." The 5 old men from Mercenary City nodded. Without saying anything, they immediately stood in a pentagram formation. Immediately, 5 tremendous presences radiated from their bodies. They formed 5 pillars of energy which surged into the sky. The 5 old men had reached the great perfection of Saint King long ago. They had already arrived at the peak of their cultivation level. They were existences that were infinitesimally close to Saint Emperor and were extremely powerful. The 5 of them used an absolutely secret technique together. The commotion was so great that it alerted many people present, and they immediately glanced over. The Chongyang clan and the Grand Elder of Mercenary City remained in the distance. They never took part in the fight for the fruit. Seeing what the 5 old men were doing, Tianjian gently sighed. He obviously knew what secret technique the 5 of them were using, but he was filled with helplessness since he could not go and stop them. At this moment, the presences of the 5 old men actually fused together. Their presences joined to become an even more terrifying presence where even their energy stacked together. It became a force that could even shake the world, causing many Saint Kings to tremble inside. "Saint Emperor, this is the overwhelming presence that only Saint Emperors can possess," some people exclaimed. The 5 old men had used a secret technique to pool their power together, actually reaching the power of a Saint Emperor. They had basically reached the level of a Saint Emperor through an alternate method, shocking many people present. The 5 old men were surrounded by a bright layer of white light as a tremendous, terrifying energy rippled in their surroundings. The 5 of them seemed to have come with the Grand Elder of Mercenary City. They seem to be using an extremely powerful ancient secret technique, and they need time to charge it up even with their strength that has reached the utmost peak, a Saint King from an ancient clan said. He was deeply shocked that Mercenary City actually hid such unknown experts. At this moment, tremendous amounts of energy quickly condensed above the 5 old men. In the end, it transformed into a figure completely condensed from energy. Its facial features were clear-cut, and it seemed alive. It seemed just like an immortal. Emotianyun, that's Emotianyun. It's the champion of the humans, Emotianyun. Just what is this powerful ancient secret technique? It can even condense Emotianyun's figure. Countless people cried out in amazement. At this moment, the Saint Kings all struggled to keep their composure even with their mental fortitude. Emotianyun was just far too well known. Even after 1,000,000 years, Emotianyun remained a godlike figure in the hearts of a countless number of people. Not only was this because he was the savior of the human race, having repelled the invasion of the 100 races, but he was also a glorious legend among the humans. He was the only sovereign-like figure that had surpassed Saint Emperor as a human. Chapter 1159. A Powerful Existence, 3. Standing like an immortal, the might from Emotianyun deeply shocked all the experts present. Under Emotianyun's tremendous presence, many Saint Kings had even lost the will to resist. Rue Jin, Hong Lian, Yu, and Jian Chen were also alerted by the incomparable might, but they tried to break free. They all looked at Emotianyun's projection and became extremely stern. Emotianyun was projected by the 5 old men of Mercenary City using an absolutely secret technique. This was something that Emotianyun had left behind in the past, and it surpassed Saint-tier battle skills. However, the conditions for casting the technique were extremely arduous. Only Saint Emperors could use it. The 5 old men had only barely managed after fusing their strength using another secret technique. The secret technique was left behind specifically for Saint Emperors. There was no room for doubt over its power. Suddenly, Mo Tianyun's figure moved. He took a step forward and the entire place immediately shook. The casual step hid an unbelievable amount of power. At that moment, space seemed to freeze and time seemed to stop. The churning black mist in the death nest calmed down. Mo Tianyun seemed to become the only thing in the world. Then, the space beneath his foot immediately began to ripple in a terrifying fashion. This ripple spread toward Xueqi and the others like a sword, moving extremely quick. All the Saint Kings stopped whatever they were doing. Their attention was involuntarily drawn to Mo Tianyun. His simple-looking step contained the truths of the world. It used the energy of the world. Xueqi, He Yu, Hong Lian, and Jian Chen immediately felt like they were immobilized. They had been firmly trapped there by an invisible energy, only able to watch helplessly as the rippling space quickly approached them like a sharp sword. Suddenly, a powerful golden light appeared on Xueqi. His body rapidly expanded and a layer of densely packed golden scales covered his body. He had assumed a half-dragon, half-human form, using his supreme strength to break free. Coupled with a roar that could shake the heavens, the sacred dragon sword had shot forward as a golden streak of light. Fusing with his sword, he stabbed at the rippling space as hard as he could. The two silently collided and did not produce a great explosion. The space only violently shook, becoming blurry and distorted. Everyone's senses were affected. The rippling from Mo Tianyun's foot vanished. It had been blocked by Xueqi, but Xueqi suffered as well. He was launched back, landing 1,000 meters away in a horrible condition. The light from the origin energy armor on his body had dulled by noticeable amount. With a clear phoenix's cry, Hong Lian also forcefully broke free as fire flashed through the air. She turned into a huge divine phoenix, radiating with scorching white flames. She used the scorching godfire hairpin to attack Mo Tianyun's figure. Mo Tianyun remained expressionless. He was not the real Mo Tianyun. He was only the result of a secret technique, one that had surpassed Saint-tier battle skills. He extended a finger and endless amounts of world force immediately gathered from outside the death nest. The world force actually condensed into a 5-meter-long finger in a short moment, and that finger then shot toward the hairpin with an unstoppable force. Boom! With a violent rumble, the origin energy weapon was knocked away by Mo Tianyun's finger while the finger dispersed at the same time. Ka! An elated phoenix's cry rang out while Hong Lian used her clan treasure to protect herself. Endless amounts of white flames surged toward Mo Tianyun, enveloping him along with the 5 old men that were hiding within the secret technique. She wanted to burn all of them to ashes. Mo Tianyun's figure gradually dulled. His presence also rapidly weakened. He was not the real thing and only a secret technique. Once the technique ran out of energy, he would disperse. Saint force circulated within the 5 old men's bodies, temporarily protecting them from the flames. However, they had become much paler, and their faces were filled with exhaustion. Ugh! The 5 old men called out at the same time. They poured their 3 vital energies into Mo Tianyun's figure, allowing him to consolidate once more. Under the control of their mind, Mo Tianyun smashed a palm firmly onto Hong Lian. Bang! With a muffled sound, Hong Lian's huge body was blown through the air with her white flames. She was launched far away by Mo Tianyun's palm strike. Roar! A deafening dragon's roar rang through the sky. The tremendous dragon aura had enveloped virtually all of the death nest. Xueqi had completely assumed his original form, turning into a 100-meter-long golden divine dragon. His scales were lustrous and shined with a golden light. Mo Tianyun remained where he was without moving. He launched a palm strike at Xueqi from 1,000 meters away. The strike suddenly became several hundred meters wide in the air as it fell toward him. It clenched the dragon tightly to its palm. Great dragon roars rang out time and time again. Clenched in Mo Tianyun's hand, Xueqi was currently attacking as hard as he could, causing the palm to constantly shake. The 5 old men from Mercenary City all slightly trembled. They had already become pale white and exhaustion was spelled out on their faces. They needed to use their vital energies to cast the secret technique, and the longer they used THRM, the more vital energies would be consumed. They were already old men, so they could not last very long at all. He sure is worthy of being a king of the dragon. This golden divine dragon has yet to become a saint emperor, yet it already possesses such great battle prowess. It's not because our secret technique is not powerful enough, but because the dragon has origin energy treasures. The 5 old men gruffly came to a conclusion. Every single one of them possessed an ugly complexion, and one of them called out, "The golden divine dragon has already been trapped by us, while one of the other 2 magical beasts has been hit by the poison of Heaven's End from the Heaven's Incense School. Only the divine phoenix is left. Everyone use your supreme secret techniques to keep her busy. The saint's fruit will belong to use without the 3 of them getting in the way." Many people became tempted. Other than the Chongyang clan, the 1 or 2 experts from the other 8 protector clans and a few from the ancient clans all began casting their supreme secret techniques to trap Hong Lian. It was different from before, since they were not offensive secret techniques but techniques to entrap. They all knew that Rue Jin and the others were protected by origin energy armors. No matter how powerful the attacks were, it would be difficult to injure them. The people from the Chongyang clan did not interfere. As soon as they did anything, it would be equivalent to becoming everyone's enemy. "I'd like to see whether you have the ability to trap me," the phoenix said in human tongue. Her eyes had already become completely red as roaring flames leaped about them. "Jian Chen, enter the artifact space." "Hey you," commanded Jian Chen. His complexion had already become very dark as black blood flowed continuously from the corner of his mouth. The poison was much more potent than he had imagined. At this moment, the entire place began to shake. The entire death nest seemed to violently tremble, causing to everyone to lose their footing. Closely after the trembling, a swathe of extremely dense red mist appeared from the depths of the death nest. It seemed to be completely created from blood as the grudges of the dead and Yin Qi cowered away. It's baleful Yin force. It's actually the baleful Yin force of the Blood Sword sect. Impossible. How can there be baleful Yin force in the death nest? Chapter 1160. The blood-red skeleton. A series of exclamations rang out. Disbelief flooded the faces of many people. The people from the 10 protector clans were affected in particular. They were all shocked inside. There were descriptive records of everything within the death nest in the 10 protector clans. All of the information originated from the countless times their ancestors had explored the land, and they had recorded everything about the place. However, the existence of baleful Yin force in the death nest had never been mentioned. There was only copious amounts of Yin Qi and grudges. The baleful Yin force is a special secret technique of the Blood Sword sect. Does that mean there is an expert of the Blood Sword sect cultivating here? That's impossible. I've met experts of the Blood Sword sect before. It's impossible for their baleful Yin force to appear here, and the energy that has just appeared is countless times more powerful. What terrifying baleful Yin force! Even so far away, my soul is still affected. It feels like it's being siphoned away by the baleful Yin force. All the Saint King's expressions changed. They all stared at the extremely dense blood-red mist in shock. The baleful Yin force did not approach them, but their souls were all affected anyway. This filled them all with deep shock. Tianjian also became extremely stern. He stared at the baleful Yin force in interest and gruffly said, "What powerful baleful Yin force! It's actually several hundred times more powerful than Houston's. How was it created? If it originates from a person, then that person's strength would be too terrifying." Jian Chen stared at the cloud of baleful Yin force unblinkingly. He thought inside, is Uncle Xiu cultivating here? Has he already become a saint emperor? Bang! 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 Suddenly, muffled sounds reverberated from the depths of the death nest. The ground constantly trembled as a demonic 100-meter-tall figure gradually emerged from the cloud of baleful Yin force. All the Saint Kings became stunned when they saw the demonic figure's appearance. It was actually a 100-meter-tall skeleton. It was completely blood-red, as if it had bathed in blood. It stood in the baleful Yin force and actually seemed to be a part of it. The baleful Yin force is from this skeleton. Someone cried out from the crowd. With that, everyone immediately looked closer. Indeed, they discovered that the extremely dense baleful Yin force was radiating from every single bone of the skeleton. The baleful Yin force actually originated from the huge skeleton that had appeared out of nowhere. This made many people extremely surprised. The skeletons formed from countless bones of saint emperors. It's all from the experts that were buried here. Another knowledgeable person cried out. What he said astounded every single Saint King. How is this possible? How have the remains that Mo Tianyun buried all those years ago formed such a huge skeleton? Did someone do something to the death nest, which is why a huge skeleton has appeared here? The Saint Emperor ancestors of our 10 protector clans have searched the death nest many times in the past, but rarely did they ever come across the remains of Saint Emperors. Many of them had vanished, so they thought that Motianyun had refined them through a huge formation. Looks like all the remains were hidden away instead. Who hid these remains? Was it Motianyun? The ancestors of my clan were once confused about why Motianyun created a place like this. It looks like Motianyun did not just make this place for the saint's fruit. There's other secrets that we don't know about. Various discussions arose in the surroundings. The protector clans as well as some of the ancient clans knew many secrets regarding the death nest. All of them said whatever they knew. Coupled with a few conjectures from other people, all of them immediately thought of a lot of things. The appearance of the giant skeleton had temporarily attracted everyone's attention. They had stopped fighting while many of them focused on the skeleton. At this moment, the blood-red skeleton moved. It extended one of its bony arms and an endless amount of baleful force immediately radiated from its bare bones. As a dense, red mist, it rolled toward everyone. Before the mist had even approached them, all the Saint Kings felt like their heads were splitting open as a stabbing pain appeared in their souls. At that moment, all of them seemed to lose control of their souls. All their souls wanted to fly out of their heads and fly over to the baleful force. All the Saint Kings were extremely shocked. The baleful force was just too terrifying. Even with their powerful souls, they struggled to withstand it. All the Saint Kings dared not stay any longer. They all retreated quickly as if they had seen a ghost. They all became filled with dread because of the baleful force. Jian Chen's soul was affected just like the other Saint Kings, but 2 powerful lights of violet and azure erupted in his sea of consciousness soon afterward. The sword spirits used their own strength to protect Jian Chen's soul. A bead appeared above Hong Lian and He Yu. It lit up with a hazy glow which protected their souls, allowing them to remain unaffected by the baleful force. The 5 old men from Mercenary City also stopped casting their secret technique. They quickly retreated like everyone. They were exhausted, so they avoided the advancing baleful force. It's a pity that using that secret technique consumes far too much energy. We don't have anything left to try other things with it, or we could try destroying that skeleton with the technique. One of them became dejected within. He felt rather helpless and regretful. Mo Tianyun's figure vanished after it lost their support, and Rue Jin recovered his freedom. A golden light flickered on him as he loudly roared at the sky. The roar was filled with anger, but just when he wanted to charge at the 5 old men, his face suddenly hardened. He also discovered the change in the situation. Rue Jin, let's leave here quickly. That skeleton is very troublesome. Hong Lian's voice rang in Rue Jin's head. Hong Lian had assumed a human form already. Chapter 1161. An existence beyond Saint Emperor. The clouds of baleful force quickly rolled toward everyone. They reached where they were standing very soon. Rue Jin had just broken free, so he had not started to run. The baleful force was extremely close to him already. Less than 100 meters away and the distance was rapidly decreasing. Rue Jin's face abruptly changed. The baleful force had yet to enter his soul, but his soul was already feeling a violent, stabbing pain. He also felt extremely dizzy. The baleful force was so powerful that even Rue Jin struggled to endure it. Rue Jin became extremely stern. He was filled with shock. As a golden divine dragon, he was the king of dragons. He possessed a natural advantage of an extremely powerful body and soul. The baleful force had not even reached him, yet it was already affecting his soul this much. He found this difficult to accept. The origin energy bead appeared above his head and shined with a hazy light, coating his body. It protected his soul, and with its assistance, the discomfort of his soul was immediately purged. The bead was a treasure that could block all attacks targeting the soul. The baleful force was powerful, but clearly it was not enough to break through the treasure's defenses. Rue Jin's eyes flickered with a golden light. He stared at the huge skeleton hidden within the baleful force before quickly arriving in front of Jian Chen. He stood with Hong Lian and He Yu. "What's up with this skeleton?" Rue Jin gruffly asked. He had been trapped in Mo Tianyun's hand earlier, isolating him from the outside world. As a result, he had no idea what had just happened. It appeared suddenly. No one knows why, but it's an enemy, Hong Lian explained in a heavy voice. The baleful force is very terrifying. No one among the humans can withstand it. If they get caught in it, they'll die for sure. We better leave here quickly before anyone notices. I suddenly feel like the death nest is much more complicated than it seems, Hei said with a frown. He was stern. All the human saint kings were rapidly retreating. They avoided the baleful force. The horror of the baleful force had scared many people witless, and only a few of them were still thinking about the saint's fruit. Xiang'er, we can't stay here. Let's leave quickly. Chongyang Qingyun suddenly appeared by Jian Chen's side and warmly spoke in concern. Jian Chen frowned slightly as a sliver of undetectable coldness flashed through his eyes. He did not pay any attention to Chongyang Qingyun, directly ignoring him. Chongyang Qingyun had used the time when he was removing Huang Luan's ancient secret technique to plant another one of his own. His actions made Jian Chen extremely furious inside, and he had already begun to treat Chongyang Qingyun as an enemy. Let's go. Why has it never appeared in countless years, and why does it have to suddenly appear in this age when there is a lack of saint emperors? Some experts of the protector clans were confused and filled with questions. The appearance of the skeleton had become a mystery to all of them. Jian Chen also became unprecedentedly grim. He stared at the blood-red mist up ahead and said, "These people can't all die here. The Tianyuan continent cannot sustain a loss like this. Seniors, are you able to destroy this skeleton?" "The baleful force does not affect us, so we can try," said Ruijin. Afterward, he went up with Hong Lian and Hei Yu to fight the skeleton together. But the power of the skeleton was far beyond anyone's expectations. The three of them attacked the skeleton using their origin energy weapons, but all that was left behind was a shallow mark. The attacks that were powerful enough to harm Saint Emperors could not even break one of the skeleton's bones. At this moment, a red light flashed by. A huge bone club had appeared in the skeleton's hands at some point, sweeping toward Ruijin and the others. Bang! 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 With three muffled sounds, the three of them were blown away by the skeleton's swing. Their origin energy armor had dulled as well. All the experts present became utterly stunned by what had just happened. All of their mouths hung agape as disbelief flooded their faces. They understood the three magical beasts' strength extremely well. They possessed the power to rival Saint Emperors, yet they could not even withstand a single blow from the skeleton. It's beyond a Saint Emperor. The skeleton already possesses strength at the level of the four champions from ancient times. A great elder of a protector clan cried out. His voice trembled as horror filled him. With that, everyone paled. Despair filled all of their eyes. Chapter 1162. A Mysterious Expert. 1. Ruijin, Hong Lian, and Hei Yu returned to Jian Chen's side with sunken faces. Their expressions were rather pale. Although they had been protected by their origin energy armor, the blood-red skeleton was just far too powerful, so they had still suffered some light injuries. This skeleton possesses a strength beyond Saint Emperor. Even the three of us cannot stop it. If we end up in a long battle with it, we'll end up heavily injured, Ruijin said in a heavy tone of voice. All the Saint Kings heard what Ruijin had said, and they all became extremely grim. They all knew that the trio were Saint Kings at great perfection, but their real strength belonged to the level of a Saint Emperor. They were the most powerful present, so if they could not deal with the skeleton, no one could. Beyond Saint Emperor. Beyond Saint Emperor. Legend has it that the strength beyond Saint Emperor belongs to a whole different level. The difference that exists between it and Saint Emperor is as wide as a chasm. It's completely impossible to make up for, because it's power that belongs to a different level, a great elder of a protector clan said with a trembling voice. Death and despair filled his eyes. Saint Emperors were like ants before those who had surpassed Saint Emperor, let alone them who were nowhere near Saint Emperor. The way out has already been sealed up by this skeleton. We're all going to die here today. My clan still needs my protection. Without us, my enemy clans definitely won't let them off. Looks like my clan will be in for a disaster. It doesn't matter if I die. What does matter is that the Tianyuan continent still requires our protection, or we won't have enough power to fend off the invasions of the Beast God continent and 100 races. Everyone sighed in despair. Many of them were filled with an unwillingness to just die here like this. During this period of time, Jian Chen had also let out the white tiger, but to his dismay, the tiger's ability to ignore formations and barriers were completely useful here. It could no longer pass through them like before. At this moment, Jian Chen thought of what Tai Ta had said in the past. His mysteries of war could break through the limitations of space, so he hesitated to try out Tai Ta's method or not, to see if his mysteries of war could take them all out. Just as Jian Chen wanted to release Tai Ta, the entire death nest shook violently. With a great boom, the formation around the third zone shook violently, vaguely showing signs of shattering. Afterward, a second and third boom rang out close after each other. They caused the formation to shake more and more violently. Then it actually cracked open to everyone's disbelief. A 10-meter-wide crack appeared. At this moment, the baleful force was already less than 1,000 meters away from them. They may have never interfered with the matters of the continent, but they must have been unwilling to see so many experts of the Tianyuan continent die here. I don't believe it's the ice goddess Hall. They don't have a sovereign-like existence. It must be the sea goddess who's done it, as she's the only one still alive out of the 4 ancient champions. A hubbub broke out among the people. Someone who had surpassed Saint Emperor had actually helped them out in secret when they were utterly doomed. This was an inspiring piece of information, filling everyone with emotion. It offered a path of escape to all of them, giving them new hope. The blood-red skeleton became even more angered. Baleful force churned violently and was endlessly poured into the ground. Immediately, streaks of blinding, red light radiated from the ground. They crisscrossed and wove together. It was actually a formation hidden beneath the ground which had been activated by the skeleton's baleful force, allowing it to appear. The formation was activated and the endless amounts of vile energies in the third zone seemed to be affected. They all began to bubble violently in the air and, under everyone's disbelief, the Qi fused with the grudges formed a cloud of blood-red baleful force. I finally understand. The baleful force must have been created from the fusion between the two vile energies. Everything's due to the formation under the ground. The two energies only fuse when the formation is activated. The death nest was created by Mo Tianyun all those years ago. Does that mean he left behind the formation in the ground as well? Why did he do something like that? Many people reached a conclusion, but they soon became even more confused. They all felt curious as to why Mo Tianyun had created a place like this. The saint's fruit definitely was not the main reason. Perhaps, it was only a pretense. The two energies fused together and formed even more baleful force. The fusion had virtually drained all the vile energies in the third zone with only a cloud of blood-red mist churning about. Soon afterward, the baleful force formed a huge, terrifying, and ferocious ghost's face that charged toward all of the Saint Kings with brandished claws and teeth. With a flash of blinding light, the resplendent blade of light appeared once again. Filled with a domineering force, it flew over from the first zone and struck the dense cloud of baleful force. The collision of the two actually knocked back the mist that all the Saint Kings feared. The blade of light continued on without weakening at all, slicing through the mist and landing on the skeleton. Boom! With a deafening sound, a slash that was several dozen meters in length appeared on the skeleton. Some of its tough bones had been cleaved in half by the attack as it stumbled backward with its huge body. It only managed to stabilize itself after taking around a dozen steps back. The Saint Kings in the second zone all became stunned. Just a long-ranged blade of light was enough to force back the skeleton that had surpassed Saint Emperor. Just how powerful was that person? An existence like that had exceeded everyone's imagination. Some of them even refused to believe that there was such a terrifying expert hiding in the world. Rue Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu all became shocked as well. They could obviously feel how terrifying the blade of light was. Even with their origin energy weapons, they could not deal attacks on that level. He's truly surpassed Saint Emperor. I wonder who he is, Rue Jin gruffly said. Chapter 1163. A Mysteries Expert, 2. The blood-red skeleton that had frightened countless Saint Kings in the death nest was blocked by a mysterious expert. Although this expert never revealed himself, everyone knew just how terrifying he was. He was able to stop the skeleton that possessed strength beyond Saint Emperor from afar without even appearing. The skeleton was extremely angry. The dense baleful force around it violently churned, surging out time and time again. However, it was forced back by a blade of light that even the skeleton itself could not block. More and more cracks appeared on its body, and a few bones were even broken. A few resplendent blades of light swept past and forced the surrounding chi and grudges of the dead to the sides. Slivers of domineering and terrifying blade chi remained there, actually causing the path paved between the vile energies to remain temporarily. Many people moved at this moment. Many Saint Kings had already begun traveling in the direction the blades of light originated from, wanting to see just who the mysterious expert was. Their movement immediately spurred on everyone else present. They immediately shot off in the same direction with lightning speed. The identity of this mysterious expert weighed on many people's minds. Jian Chen and the others were not exceptions either. They all followed the group in the direction of the blades of light. They passed through the second zone with lightning-like speed and arrived in the first. As soon as they made it there, everyone immediately jumped. A suffocatingly powerful blade chi filled the entire space. The blade chi seemed to have infected the air, making the air there feel sharp. A blinding white light stood over 10 kilometers in front of them. It was as dazzling as the sun, illuminating the entire first zone of the death nest. It was endless amounts of blade chi. The white light was completely formed from mighty blade chi, and looking closely, it was not difficult to discover that the light seemed like a huge blade. It was 100 meters tall. "It's a bald," someone murmured in amazement. In that moment, everyone focused their attention on the blade. It was just a pity that the blade was covered by blade chi, so it was blurry and unclear. The great elders of the Tyrant's Blade School stared at the blade's figure without blinking at all. A gleam of light flashed through their eyes as doubt and surprise crossed their faces. At this moment, the blade chi that filled the entire first zone quickly weakened. The white light also quickly darkened, and in just a few seconds, the figure of the giant blade suddenly disappeared. It returned peace to the death nest. What's up with this blade? Was it secretly controlled by a sovereign-like figure? Or was it all because of formations? In my opinion, it's extremely likely that this was from formations. It's definitely what Mo Tianyun left behind all those years ago. A few Saint Kings immediately began making guesses. Some people believed that there was a great person secretly behind the blade, while others were certain it came from a formation, something Mo Tianyun had set up all those years ago. The ground began to shake. The blood-red skeleton had passed through the formation and was pursuing them. The blood-red mist around it surged into the sky, and the baleful force it radiated was even denser than before. The Saint Kings no longer dared to stay any longer now that the blade had disappeared. They left as quickly as they could. As soon as Jian Chen's group flew out of the death nest, Rue Jin began constructing a space gate. However, as soon as it formed, several terrifying attacks flew in from all directions, shattering the gate. "Hand over the saint's fruit, or you won't be leaving here," a great elder from a protector clan called out. His presence quickly skyrocketed. He seemed like a whole different person when he fled earlier. Without the threat of the blood-red skeleton, everyone focused their attention of the saint's fruit again. Over 200 Saint Kings surrounded Jian Chen and the others. The atmosphere became utterly nerve-wracking. The great elders of the Chongyang clan stood to one side with ugly expressions. They were extremely worried, but they did not stand up and help Jian Chen. World of Feathers. Suddenly, Hong Lian cried out. The armor on her began to disassemble once more, turning into countless phoenix feathers to form a huge cage around them. Every single feather burned with intense white flames, preventing the Saint Kings from approaching them. "If you want the saint's fruit, then use everything you have," a Saint King cried out. Many Saint Kings stepped forward and used various Saint-tier battle skills and powerful ancient secret techniques to barrage the world of feathers. The temperature within the feathers was extremely hot as well. Even the space distorted slightly. Hong Lian did everything she could to maintain the defense as she said, "Rue Jin, quickly create a space gate. The battle skills and secret techniques these people know are too powerful. They're not much weaker than the Saint Emperor Vengeful Spirits, so I can't last too long. The space in here is affected by the flames. It's become very unstable, so creating a space gate will be rather difficult." "I'll try my best," said Rue Jin before swinging his hand. The space in front of him immediately split open, but the space gate did not form as quickly this time. Rue Jin's arm was extended in the crack. The profound truths of the world were present on his hand. He was using a Saint King's ability to create space gates. Outside the feathers, 100-meter-long hand suddenly fell from the sky. With a deafening boom, the hand viciously struck the feathers, causing them all to tremble violently. Chapter 1164. The human Saint Emperor appears. The sudden hand stunned all the Saint Kings who were attacking the feathers. They all raised their heads in doubt and surprise. The palm strike was extremely powerful. It was on par to an attack from Gusties, but more importantly, many Saint Kings felt an extremely powerful ripple of the mysteries of the world within it. It was at a level Saint Kings could not achieve. It's a Saint Emperor. There's a Saint Emperor who's joined us. An ancestor of an ancient clan growled. His complexion was rather horrible. He still had a sliver of a chance at obtaining the Saint's fruit when he contended against the Protector clans, but he had no chance at all once a Saint Emperor interfered. It's him, the Path Lord of the carnal desires. He's interested in the Saint's fruit as well, a Saint King cried out. He stared at the sky with much interest. In the empty sky, a white-robed middle-aged man had already appeared as some certain time. He levitated in the air like a normal person and looked down on everything. An ill paleness was present on his evil-looking face. He was indeed the Path Lord of the carnal desires. Although he had appeared under an extremely low profile, he made people feel like he controlled the world as he hovered in the sky. Hong Lian's face changed within the feathers. She heavily said, "The human Saint Emperor's come. If he works with the human Saint Kings, the feathers will be broken through in an even shorter amount of time." Ruijin said nothing. He was very stern, putting everything he had into creating a space gate, but the space within the feathers had become very unstable due to the terrifying heat. The Path Lord stared sharply at the huge ball of fire constructed from countless phoenix feathers. Afterward, he slowly raised his hand and the surrounding energy of the world immediately began to move violently. Endless amounts of world force condensed in his hand at an unbelievable rate. Fusion of the 7 emotions, palm of severance. The Path Lord said with an extremely ordinary voice. He shot it down with that. Immediately, the vast amounts of world force condensed in his hand surged forward. It formed an invisible palm, flying toward the world of feathers with tremendous force. The surrounding energy was quickly absorbed as it flew, merging into the invisible palm and making it even more powerful. Not only was the palm a full-powered attack from a Saint Emperor, it contained the path of carnal desires from the Path Lord. The strike collided against the feathers, but it did not manage to destroy the defense. The surging energy and world force dissipated, but an invisible ripple passed through the feathers and entered the space inside. This was the path of desires created by the Path Lord. It was not just a simple energy attack, but a special method to injure the souls. Ruijin, He Yu, and Hong Lian were all protected by their beads, so they did not fear the Path Lord's method of attacks. He Yu hovered above Jian Chen, using the hazy light to block the attack for Jian Chen. However, the space within the feathers was impacted by the attack, causing the space itself to violently shook. In other times, the shaking space would not have affected them at all, but Ruijin was currently constructing a space gate. What they feared most was unstable space. Just as the space gate was about to be completed, it suddenly collapsed and reduced Ruijin's efforts to nothing. God damn it, that bastard's actually come to make trouble right now. Once I break through to Class 9, he'll be the first one I kill. Ruijin became enraged. Killing intent bubbled around him as he became ready to kill. The Path Lord of Carnal Desire's palm strike had locked them out of the thought of leaving easily. A gleam of light immediately flashed through the eyes of the Path Lord when he saw that his palm strike actually failed to achieve the intended results. He murmured, "They sure are worthy of being origin energy treasures. They're actually so powerful, but maintaining the defenses must drain you heavily. I'd like to see just how long you can last. The Saint's fruit will be mine today. Probably only it can cure me of my wounds." With that, the Path Lord continued to attack the barrier of feathers. Every single strike of his possessed extremely great might and would cause an earth-shaking commotion. Just by himself, he basically controlled all the world force in the radius of several tens of kilometers. He could use it all to deal devastating attacks with just a raise of his hand. The space within the feathers was reduced to utter chaos from the Path Lord's continuous attacks. Even with Ruijin's strength, he could not construct a space gate. This can't continue. I've expanded too much energy. Ruijin, He Yu, you two pave a path of blood. We'll make them pay with blood this time. Hong Lian ground her teeth with a pale white face. Cold killing intent had appeared in her eyes. Although the 3 of them had heavily injured a few human experts in the death nest before, they had held back and did not slaughter them. However, The bitter resistance had already ignited her killing intent. Hong Lian, work with Heiyu to take Jian Chen away. I'll go test out the human Saint Emperor, Rui Jin heavily said. His irritation for the Pathlord had reached a point of resentment as well. Hong Lian nodded before looking toward Heiyu. She asked in concern, Heiyu, can you endure it? Heiyu's situation had clearly worsened. Not only did his face turn place, even his arms has blackened. Blood flowed constantly from the corner of his lips. This poison sure is powerful. It's probably much more terrifying than the poison that's ranked first in the world, but I'm still a Saint King at great perfection. Poisoning me to death isn't that easy, Heiyu said in an extremely gruff voice. Senior Heiyu, once we get to safety, I'll immediately use by Radiant Saint Force Origin Energy to purge your poison, Jian Chen said. Suddenly, the feathers collapsed and countless, huge feathers shrank back to finger length, shooting through the air as red streaks of light toward Hong Lian. Hong Lian's armor reassembled. I was right. You indeed cannot last for very long. You've finally been forced out by me. Now hand over the saint's fruit. I won't make it difficult for you, the Pathlord's voice rang out from the sky. He seemed extremely nonchalant. He knew that Rui Jin and the others were protected by Origin energy armors, but he continued to act like victory was in his grasp. A resplendent golden sword chi was what he received as a response. Clad in the sacred dragon's armor with the treasured bead hovering above his head, Rui Jin aggressively charged over with his sacred dragon's sword. The Pathlord showed nothing, but an undetectable sliver of fear still appeared in the depths of his eyes. He dared not to take the sword chi condensed from Origin energy head-on, so he used world force to disperse it. Although Rui Jin possessed the Origin energy treasures, he was not an expert of the Origin realm. All he could do was make Saint Emperors fear him. He was unable to suppress 3 Saint Emperors with supreme force like Xiao Ling. Rui Jin kept the Pathlord busy as Hong Lian and Heiyu conducted a slaughter beneath. This time, they did not hold back at all and fought as hard as they could. Very soon, a few weaker Saint Kings died to their hands. They died immediately since their souls failed to escape, and around a dozen other Saint Kings were also heavily injured. However, they were either saved by companions at a crucial moment or fled using secret techniques. The 5 old men from Mercenary City looked at each other, and a sliver of determination appeared in their eyes. One of them said, whatever, we won't take the saint's fruit then. We're about to return to the earth soon anyway, so why not use our last bit of vitality to cast the absolute secret technique again? We can leave the fruit to someone talented in Mercenary City. Yeah, even if we die we can't die in vain, the 4 other old men agreed. At that moment, all 5 of them had made up their minds about their deaths. Chapter 1165. Gathering of 4 Saint Emperors. The 5 special old men from Mercenary City began to cast their absolutely secret technique again. Since they had consumed a lot of vitality when they had cast the technique the first time, they could be described as close to the end of their lives. They did not have much vitality left, and their lives could be extinguished at any moment. They had reached their final moments, so casting it this time was much more difficult than the first. Just the time they spent charging up was much longer than before. Jian Chen killed through the crowd with Heiyu and Hong Lian. He pushed his strength at the 7th heavenly layer of Saint King to the maximum, seemingly able to challenge an 8th heavenly layer Saint King. The Saint artifact hovered above his head, blocking powerful attacks from the 9th heavenly layer of great perfection from time to time. Even though that was the case, he was covered in blood. There was his own blood, as well as his opponent's blood. He was littered with wounds, but his strength remained the same and his presence was mighty with his tough chaotic body. Rui Jin and the Pathlord of Carnal Desire's fight was extremely intense. Both of their strengths had reached the apex, so every clash was devastating. Their battle high up the sky had gradually risen to the icy and dark outer space. Hong Lian, Heiyu, and Jian Chen had already charged out of the Saint King's encirclement. At this moment, Hong Lian's armor disassembled again and turned into 100-meter-long feathers that burned with endless white flames. It formed a huge wall of fire in the air, obstructing the human Saint Kings. I'll stop them. Heiyu, leave with Jian Chen first. Hong Lian maintained the wall of fire as she turned and gave an order to Heiyu. Heiyu nodded and did not add anything extra. He immediately grabbed Jian Chen by the arm and flew into the distance. He wanted to find some stable space to create a space gate and leave. His condition was even more severe than before. If he did not get it under control in time, he would probably become doomed. Leave won't be that easy. At this moment, a sneer rang through the space nearby. The space several hundred meters ahead rippled slightly and two burly men suddenly emerged. The appearance of the two people caused Jian Chen and He Yu's facial expressions to drastically change. He Yu stared at them with an ugly expression and growled, "Rulers of the beast god continent, I never thought even you two would come." The two people were Kaiser and the Tiger Emperor, but compared to last time, they were both distinctly pale. Kaiser stared at the saint artifact above Jian Chen for a while, and a gleam of light flashed through his eyes. He sneered, "Hand over the saint's fruit and we won't make things difficult for you." Jian Chen put the saint artifact away. The white tiger was currently hiding within it, so he needed to remove all possibilities of Kaiser stealing the saint artifact. Afterward, with a flip of his hand, a ruined divine hall appeared. It was the Octaterra divine hall that had been smashed to pieces by Kaiser before. The divine hall had always been repairing itself, but it was rather slow, so it only seemed to be in a little better shape than before. It could still withstand a few attacks from Saint Emperors, however. Looks like the lesson from the barrier spirit of Mercenary City still wasn't enough. Do you still want to suffer the same outcome as well? A sliver of fear flashed through the very depths of Kaiser and the Tiger Emperor's eyes when they heard him mention the barrier spirit. They had already developed a fearful mentality for the barrier spirit, since it was an existence that had truly surpassed Saint Emperor. However, Kaiser's eyes turned icy once again without much time. He coldly said, "We were too close to Mercenary City last time, which was why we disturbed the barrier spirit. It's very far away from Mercenary City here, so it's impossible for the barrier spirit to come here. You better give up on the thought of relying on it." The terrifying temperature from behind suddenly disappeared. Hong Lian had re-equipped the 9 refined Godfire Feathermail. She was coated in terrifying white flames as she then charged toward Kaiser as a white streak. She did not pay any attention to the human experts behind. The two Saint Emperors of the Beast God continent were far more terrifying than them, and she knew it would be very difficult to escape once they got near Jian Chen. He Yu clenched his teeth. Even though he was heavily poisoned, he had no other choice right now. All he could do was reluctantly charged up with his machete and keep the Tiger Emperor busy. A dragon's roar rang across the sky. Rue Jin had noticed the situation below as he fought against the Pathlord and immediately abandoned his opponent to return. He shot through the sky as a dazzling golden streak of light, just like a comet. He quickly made his way to the ground. "Golden Divine Dragon, our battle is still not over." The Pathlord also used his Saint Emperor abilities, moving faster than Rue Jin. He first blocked Rue Jin before striking with a hand full of vast energy. He stopped Rue Jin from providing assistance. "Pathlord, you're actually working with the experts of the Beast God continent." Rue Jin immediately understood the truth behind the matter with some thought. His face became extremely dark. The Pathlord said nothing. He used everything he had as a Saint Emperor to keep Rue Jin busy. They went back to outer space and neither of them could overcome the other. Jian Chen did not pay attention to the battles of Rue Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu. He immediately used the illusory flash, flying off into the distance as fast as he could. He could only depend on himself now. It had already been very difficult for the 5 of them to cast the secret technique a second time in their current conditions, so they had literally put their lives on the line. They could not last for very long. "Do it!" At the same time, the great elders of the Chongyang clan secretly communicated with each other. They formed seals with their hands at the same time and used an ancient secret technique. Borrowing from the forces of the world, locus reversal. They called out at the same time. Suddenly, they disappeared, having moved to another location through the ancient secret technique. They had switched positions with the rock beside Jian Chen, arriving by his side instantaneously. "Don't resist. Relax." Chongyang Zhu Shao spoke in a stern voice. They formed hand seals again and used the locus reversal a second time. This time, they traveled several dozen kilometers, appearing in a region of empty land with Jian Chen. The people of the Chongyang clan had escaped with the saint's fruit. The other humans all reacted by crying out. They quickly pursued. Chongyang Qing Yun glanced past the people pursuing them and heavily said, "The space here is unstable, so it's very difficult to create a space gate. Let's go." The other great elders did not hesitate at all, immediately leaving the area as quickly as possible with Jian Chen. God damn it, how did it end up like this? Kaiser and the Tiger Emperor could not help but swear. They were extremely irritated. Originally, they had thought everything would be flawless, but never did they think that Songqiong would end up trapped, allowing Jian Chen to flee with the saint's fruit. Little Phoenix, you're much stronger than before but still not enough to injure me. I have matters to attend to today, so I'll fight with you some other day, Kaiser growled. He wanted to go chase Jian Chen. However, Hong Lian immediately sent the scorching godfire hairpin at Kaiser with terrifying white flames, forcing him to face it seriously. He had no time to chase Jian Chen. Before we decide victory today, you won't be leaving, Hong Lian coldly said. Her attacks became more intense before pinning Kaiser down. He Yu was the same, using everything he had to keep the Tiger Emperor busy and prevent him from leaving. Although the Pathlord and Rue Jin fought an intense battle in outer space, they always paid attention to what was happening below. Seeing how Jian Chen had actually fled with the saint's fruit, the Pathlord immediately panicked. He no longer bothered with Rue Jin, wanting to pursue Jian Chen. Human Saint Emperor, our battle is still not over. With a golden flash of light, Rue Jin slashed across the top of the Pathlord's head while he was distracted. He cut through some hair, almost injuring the Pathlord. The Pathlord was flustered and exasperated. His face was pale white. He had said the same thing to Rue Jin just before. He did not think that the same line would be thrown back to him so quickly. Chapter 1166. Returning to the Protector Clan, 1. Jian Chen was carried along by the great elders of the Chongyang clan, flying into the distance as quickly as they could. The great elders had all reached Saint King many years ago, so their grasp over space was much more powerful than Jian Chen's. At full speed, they were much faster than Jian Chen even when he used the illusory flash. At this moment, all of them were stern. They only bothered to travel toward a faraway region of space that was stable. They knew that they had basically become everyone's enemy by taking Jian Chen away like this. They were great elders of a protector clan and possessed exalted statuses, but no one worried about their identities when the saint's fruit was on the line. There were no saint kings that could resist the temptation of reaching Saint Emperor. As long as they became Saint Emperors, they had no need to fear the protector clans, so they obviously had no need to be afraid of offending them. A large group of human experts pursued from close behind. The people who knew the effects of the saint's fruit were affected in particular, having become green with greed. Some of them used secret techniques to travel faster, so they rapidly drew closer to Jian Chen and the others. Hong Lian, He Yu, and Rue Jin all kept a Saint Emperor busy each. They prevented the Saint Emperors from interfering with Jian Chen's escape, and they were in no shape to consider anything else. Borrowing from the forces of the world, locus reversal. The great elders of the Chongyang clan used the secret technique again and traversed over 100 kilometers. Afterward, they continued to flee with Jian Chen. It was very taxing to use the secret technique, let alone the fact that they had to bring an additional person along. As a result, they could not use it continuously even with their strength, requiring a time to buffer. The two parties, where one ran and the other pursued, traveled for 1,000 kilometers before finally arriving in a region of space that was relatively more stable. Chongyang Qing Yun immediately constructed a space gate. At the same time, over 10 balls of surging energy and sword chi shot over from behind with lightning-like speed. Every single attack possessed devastating power. They were all attacks from Saint Kings at great perfection, some from protector clans and others from ancient clans or independent cultivators. The violent attacks surged toward the space gate with unstoppable forces. Wherever they passed, the space would violently shake, as if it were about to shatter. The affected space impacted Chongyang Qing Yun while he was creating a space gate as well, because the space there became rather unstable. Go quick! Chongyang Qing Yun growled. His voice was filled with worry. All the great elders became extremely stern. Without any hesitation, they entered the space gate with Jian Chen as fast as they could. The space gate disappeared instantly after they had all entered it. The space there had also returned to how it was, and soon afterward, all the attacks landed on that region of space. It caused the space there to shatter and the surrounding radius of several thousand meters to violently tremble. Damn it, those bastards from the Chongyang clan. We actually let them get away. I never thought that the Saint's fruit would end up with the Chongyang clan in the end. Looks like another Saint Emperor will appear on our Tianyuan continent soon. It's just a pity that he's not a member of our clan, but the Chongyang clans, sigh, it only appears after 40,000 years, something many of our ancestors have missed purely because of luck. I've missed it just like this. What a pity, what a pity. It's all because of those 3 vagrant magical beasts that don't belong to the beast god continent. If they didn't do everything they did to protect Jian Chen, how would the fruit have ended up with the Chongyang clan? Now they've done it. Not only do they have an unprecedented prodigy, they have an exceptional relationship with the winged tiger god. Coupled with a Saint Emperor in the future, is there still anyone on the Tianyuan continent that can stop them? All the experts broke into discussion. Regret and dejection crossed the faces of many while the experts from the protector clans appeared worried as well. The Chongyang clan was now far more powerful than what they could imagine. None of them wished for a protector clan to be more powerful than themselves. Boom, boom, boom. Several violent sounds rang out as violent energy splattered in all directions. The space shook heavily after being struck while the supreme presence of Saint Emperors filled the surroundings. It was enough to cause the ground to shake from the presences alone. Songqiong stood proudly in the sky as he radiated with a supreme presence. He stood like he was a king looking down on his people. He had broken out of the secret technique from the 5 old men of Mercenary City with his supreme strength. His tremendous presence had directly crushed and collapsed Mo Tianyun's figure. The 5 old men violently jerked and a mouthful of blood shot out at the same time. The blood scattered into the air as mist, and they instantly became extremely pale. They were all haggard, and the light in the eyes of 4 of them quickly vanished, becoming dull. They collapsed to the ground. Only one of them managed to stay standing with much difficulty. The last old man stared fixedly at Songqiong, who had broken free. He powerlessly said, "It's a pity that the 5 of us have already reached the end of our lives. Otherwise, before he could finish speaking, the light in his eyes faded rapidly as well. He had departed the world full of unwillingness and regret." Chapter 1167, Returning to the Protector Clan, 2. The Path Lord of Carnal Desire's expression suddenly changed. He was still injured, having not yet recovered from the wounds caused by the barrier spirits of Mercenary City. He could temporarily protect himself as he fought against Xueqi in this current state, but he had no confidence in being able to retreat when faced with attacks from all 3 of them. What pained him the most was the fact that all 3 of them were protected by origin energy armor. It was very difficult for him to harm them with his power as a Saint Emperor while his famed techniques were ineffective due to the pearl that protected the soul. Their weapons also contained origin energy, something that only those beyond Saint Emperor could control. It was energy that belonged to a whole different domain, so even Saint Emperors found it difficult to withstand injuries caused by origin energy. The Path Lord became extremely grim. He collected the surrounding energy of the world with his abilities as a Saint Emperor, and struck at the 3 of them with 3 palm strikes. Each strike was filled with extremely violent power, and they even contained a Saint Emperor's mysteries of the world. Even Saint Kings at great perfection would become as weak as ants before this great power. It was not something they could withstand at all. Xueqi, Hong Lian, and He Yu showed no fear as they aggressively attacked the Path Lord. Before their origin energy weapons, the attacks were nothing. They collapsed the palm strikes using their weapons before continuing without slowing down, striking at the Path Lord with their origin energy weapons as they emitted a bright light. The 3 of them utterly hated the Path Lord, so they used everything they had. The origin energy weapons were swung as they stood in a triangle, where their vast presences caused space to freeze up. They locked tightly onto the Path Lord's presence. The Path Lord struggled to remain as composed as before. He suddenly roared, "Do you really think that I'm easy to be trifled with?" A vast and surging storm of energy erupted from his body, forming a whirlwind of energy that wreaked havoc in all directions. It caused space to shake and crack open everywhere. Extremely pure and powerful energy had condensed in both his hands. He avoided the furious Xueqi and Hong Lian, charging toward He Yu of his own accord. One of his hands seemed to have fused with the surrounding space, sweeping through the air with a string of illusionary afterimages. It seemed slow, yet it struck He Yu's machete extremely swiftly. His hand did not come in contact with the machete, but the energy in his hand slammed into the side of the blade. It knocked the machete out of He Yu's hand and caused He Yu's arm to become numb. The Path Lord's other hand also struck He Yu's chest with lightning-like speed after knocking away the blade. Die, human Saint Emperor! Hong Lian shouted. Flames surged around her as she made her way around the divine hall. She continued to attack the Path Lord with her hairpin in her hand as she stared at him with icy cold killing intent. The Path Lord rapidly retreated. He glanced past the three of them coldly and gritted his teeth. If I had recovered from my injuries that the barrier spirit of Mercenary City gave me, just the three of you would not be enough to injure me. However, you three are still not enough to stop me from leaving. The Path Lord backpedaled and no longer faced the three of them head-on. His two hands slowly circled around with extremely profound truths of the world. They seemed to have created some connection with the region of space as the two resonated together. Void shatter. Suddenly, the Path Lord yelled out. Immediately, extremely powerful world force shook as the space in front of him shattered. It rapidly collapsed, becoming an eternal darkness. There was only void inside. Hong Lian's face changed slightly. She knew that the Path Lord could shatter and collapse space with his Saint Emperor abilities. Entering it would mean almost certain doom, so she immediately stayed far away from it. Chapter 1168. Returning to the Protector Clan, 3. The shattered space collapsed piece by piece while the affected area expanded. From afar, it looked like a huge black hole, preventing Rue Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu from getting anywhere close. They avoided it from afar. The Path Lord of Carnal Desires vanished behind the collapsed space while their visibility of his was obstructed. A while later, the space began to recover slowly and finally closed up completely. But the Path Lord was nowhere to be seen. We actually let him escape, Hong Lian said, exasperated. Saint Emperors know quite a few abilities. Facing Saint Emperors with our strength is obviously not a question, but killing them will possess a certain difficulty. Though, the human Saint Emperor has suffered a strike from me. My sword impaled his chest, and he won't be able to make a full recovery from that injury in a short amount of time. We failed to kill him, but we made him pay a price, Rue Jin said. His voice was also filled with some regret. We better go find Jian Chen now. He's left with the people of the Protector clans. He might be a part of them, but any connections of family or friends will become insignificant. I'm worried he'll come in danger. He's our only hope to return to our clansmen, so we can't let any accidents happen to him. Also, He Yu's situation is getting worse. He needs to be healed with the origin energy of Radiant Saint Force. Hong Lian sternly explained the situation. Rue Jin nodded. He immediately left with Hong Lian and He Yu, constantly casting secret techniques to search for Jian Chen's whereabouts. With their departures, the remaining scattered group of Saint Kings in the air sighed before leaving as well. Many of them were filled with envy, regret, and an unwillingness to give up. Many of them had anticipated a day that they would become a Saint Emperor for a very long time. A position where they would stand at the apex and surpass the Protector clans. Now that they had just narrowly missed the Saint's fruit, they found it difficult to accept the arousal of hope and then utter despair. This was because there were not one Saint King who was not interested in the realm of Saint Emperors. Once a Saint King reached Saint Emperor, not only would it gift them with supreme power, their lives would be extended by several thousand years. The region outside the Death Nest became much quieter. Most of the Saint Kings had already left, and only a small number remained. They were unwilling to leave. When Jian Chen and the Great Elders emerged from the space gate, they were no longer in the original space. They had entered an independent space that had been split open. It was teeming with the energy of the world and the scenery was charming. It was a beautiful miniature world. Jian Chen glanced around as a gleam of light flashed through his eyes. He had been here before, so he recognized the place with a single glance. It was the space inhabited by the Protector Chongyang clan. Chongyang Qing Yun had brought them back to the Protector clan. The space was independent of the outside world, and the world gate would be tightly closed under ordinary circumstances, isolating it completely. People could only leave through a special method. Now that he was here, Jian Chen did not feel safe at all. Instead, he felt a great sense of danger, far greater than when he had been encircled by the Saint Emperor vengeful spirits. Jian Chen's heart sank, but he showed none of that on his face. He glanced at the authoritative great elders around him secretly and discovered that they were all feeling joy and excitement from the bottom of their hearts. Jian Chen could even see burning desire and impatience in Chongyang Qingyun's eyes. At this moment, Chongyang Qingyun looked toward Jian Chen. Just when he wanted to speak, Jian Chen cut him off. "Great elders, I'm very heavily injured, so I need to find a place to heal immediately. Otherwise, it might leave behind injuries." Jian Chen was currently bathed in blood with nothing else to be seen. Vicious gashes littered his body all over. The gashes were bone-deep and ghastly. Without his chaotic body's toughness, someone else in a similar condition as him would probably have collapsed long ago. "Xiangtian, your wounds are just far too heavy. Come with us to the ancestral hall to heal first. There are medicines there that can help you recover quickly," Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao said in concern. "I thank you for your concern, but I have medicine on me. I can deal with my wounds myself." With that, Jian Chen's face changed and blood spurted from his mouth. He weakly said, "My condition is rapidly worsening. I can't delay it any longer. I need to find a place immediately so I can go into seclusion and recover." With that, Jian Chen flew to a nearby mountain peak in a teetering fashion. He used the emperor armament to carve out a cave and disappeared into it. Chongyang Qingyun stared deeply at Jian Chen's back as he moved away. A gleam of light flickered through his eyes, and he became uneasy. However, he recovered very quickly and laughed aloud. "I never thought that the saint's fruit would be obtained by our clan. This holds far too much importance for the clan. A saint emperor will appear in our Chongyang clan soon. Yeah, once Xiangtian consumes the saint's fruit, he'll definitely reach saint emperor successfully with his talent." Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao faintly smiled. An indescribable pride was plastered on his face and he glanced at Chongyang Qingyun, perhaps out of pure coincidence. With that, Chongyang Qingyun's face hardened, but it only lasted for a slight moment. He recovered in the blink of an eye and smiled faintly as well. "You're right. Xiangtian's talent is unprecedented. He's achieved such great things in less than 100 years. I believe Xiangtian will break through to Saint Emperor very quickly and become a supreme expert that can shake the world. Alright, let's end the conversation here. We've all expended a lot of energy on our trip to the Death Nest, so we better go recover quick. We need to maintain our peak conditions to repel any sneak attacks from other experts. After all, the Saint's fruit holds far too much temptation. We need to be on guard at all times." The great elders all left together and headed to the central divine hall. Jian Chen stood within the cave with a rather dark expression. Through his presence, he had caught every single detail of the great elders' conversation and their changes in expression. He knew exactly how they had reacted. This place is indeed not safe. Chongyang Qingyun's greed for the saint's fruit is far too strong. The other great elders may not have shown it before, but who knows what they're thinking, Jian Chen thought. He had suddenly found that all the people of the Chongyang clan were no longer reliable at that moment, including Chongyang Zhu Xiao and Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao. This was because the saint's fruit was just far too enticing. As the only shortcut to Saint Emperor, any connections, like kinship or friendship, were as fragile as rice paper. If you managed to miss that long post of mine, CSG now has a Patreon set up, where you can read up to 35 chapters ahead. This was why the Emperor armaments were terrifying. There had never been a person throughout history who cultivated by absorbing the energy of the Emperor armament. Even in the glorious age of Saint Emperors, no one dared to do that. There was only Gue Hai Yi Dao. As the Emperor armament's energy was rapidly consumed, Gue Hai Yi Dao's presence basically increased with every moment of time. The speed was astounding. His strength increased rapidly. He had no need to comprehend the mysteries of the world since recovering his memories was equivalent to recovering his former cultivation level. A few figures flew over from afar before kneeling down courteously outside the forbidden grounds. They were the great elders of the Tyrant's Blade sect, and they were all gloomy and dejected. "Founding ancestor, we've returned. We were useless and unable to retrieve the saint's fruit," an old man said, depressed. He felt extremely regretful. Gue Hai Yi Dao slowly opened his eyes. His gaze was extremely ordinary, but within hid an extremely sharp light, like a blade. It was acute and forceful. His gazed in the direction of the death nest, as if he could see the distant place through space. That's not a problem. The Saint's fruit isn't that important. It can let people reach Saint Emperor, but you still can break through without it. Gui Hai Yi Dao said in an extremely simple tone. But Ancestor, reaching Saint Emperor has become extremely difficult. Saint Emperors have stopped appearing in the 10 Protector clans. We only have one human Saint Emperor now, and he became one by paving his own path of cultivation with his willpower, a great elder bitterly replied. Gui Hai Yi Dao glanced over all of them. All of the great elders shivered inside when their founding ancestors' gaze passed by them. They all felt like that had been locked onto by an extremely sharp blade. They had actually felt dread at the bottom of their hearts. The great elders were extremely shocked as their hearts churned. They also felt even more admiration for Gui Hai Yi Dao as well as more fear. They knew their founding ancestor's true strength was much greater than the realm of Saint King he had recently reached. I can let you become Saint Emperors at most in 100 years and at least a few decades. You can all wait until that day, Gui Hai Yi Dao simply replied. However, the great elders felt like they had been struck by a bolt from the blue when they heard what he said. They became filled with disbelief. Founding Ancestor, all of you are dismissed. In the next few years, properly consolidate your foundations. Gui Hai Yi Dao cut off the great elder. Yes, Ancestor. Even though the great elders were doubtful, they dared not disobey Gui Hai Yi Dao's orders. They all left courteously. After they had left, Gui Hai Yi Dao focused his attention on the direction of the death nest again. He mumbled, just what does Emotion Yun want to do? He's gone to great lengths to create the death nest. I must say it's earned my admiration. After 1,000,000 years of reincarnations, my wounds from the laws have finally been erased. I've understood a lot after so many reincarnations and so many lives. I have a lot benefited, so once I fully recover my strength, I'll definitely be able to reach another level. I just wonder when the 9 of them are going to awaken. CSG now has a Patreon set up, where you can read up to 35 chapters ahead. Chapter 1170. Ill motives. Jian Chen remained in the artifact space. Right now, the Chongyang clan was no longer a safe place. It was extremely dangerous. Staying in it had suddenly become like a prison. He did not possess the secret technique to open the closed world gate. The Chongyang clan was exceptionally quiet today. Many clansmen sealed themselves in quiet rooms to devote themselves to cultivation. The dense energy of the world quickly surged toward a few mountains peaks or a few residences. From afar, there were only a few younger people scattered about as they practiced martial arts and a few people hiding in desolate places, casting battle skills against tough rock faces. An old but upright figure suddenly emerged from the central divine hall. His presence was erased, so he seemed simple, just like any old man. He was one of the 7 great elders, Chongyang Qing Yun. Chongyang Qing Yun had appeared silently by the door. His profound eyes twinkled slightly. He first looked around before turning his attention to the mountain peak where Jian Chen had gone into seclusion. After hesitating slightly, a determined light flickered through his eyes and he moved. He flew toward the cave with extremely great speed while remaining silent. He arrived outside the cave in the blink of an eye. He calmly gazed at the barrier Jian Chen had cast down at the entrance before smiling as if he had just seen a joke. With a rapid movement of his hands, he used hand seals to cast a secret technique. He managed to pass through the barrier through a technique that looked like teleportation and enter the cave without triggering the barrier. After all, Jian Chen's comprehension of the mysteries of the world remained at the level of saint rulers. The barrier was basically non-existent before Chongyang Qing Yun, who was at the great perfection of Saint King and knew many secret techniques. In the slightly dim cave, the fist-sized saint artifact hovered in the air and was alit with a faint golden light. It illuminated the cave to its dim state. Chongyang Qing Yun arrived before it and stood with his arms behind his back. He stared at it in interest and frowned slightly. He murmured to himself, I didn't think that little bastard would be so clever, to hide in this small tower to recover. This basically removes any possibility of me getting the saint's fruit from him. Chongyang Qing Yun was rather unwilling to stop there. He paced around the saint artifact as his face gradually darkened. He murmured, this tower's extremely tough. Only saint emperors can smash through it. I can't do anything to him if he hides in there, so what should I do? Jian Chen currently sat in a hall in the center of the artifact space. His expression was extremely ugly. The saint artifact had already accepted him as a master, so an extremely obscure connection had already developed between him and the saint artifact. Changyang Zhu Xiao turned around and left while Changyang Zhu Yunxiao stayed behind. He found a flat area to sit down. The barrier that Jian Chen had cast down stood 3 meters in front of him. Jian Chen murmured in the artifact space, "Of the 7 great elders, 3 have already tried to do something to me while I was recovering, but it's fortunate that Changyang Zhu Yunxiao and Changyang Zhu Xiao arrived in time, or the saint artifact might have been taken away by the 3 of them. Now that Changyang Zhu Yunxiao is personally watching over outside, the people in the cave won't dare to do anything." Did he do this because he knew the 3 of them had already entered the cave and had come to prevent them? Or is it purely a coincidence? I still can't trust any of them. Jian Chen lowered his head in thought before moving. He had already silently vanished from the artifact space, reappearing in the dim cave. Now that he could no longer stay here, since it would be very easy for him to fall prey to the schemes of others, he might as well appear in front of them in a bold fashion. Perhaps he could stop them from acting out in the open, in hopes that they wouldn't lay their hands on him so easily. Jian Chen put the saint artifact away and made his way outside as if nothing had happened at all. He discovered Changyang Zhu Yunxiao sitting outside and a sliver of surprise immediately flashed across his face. He asked, "Great-grandfather, why are you here? Have you come looking for me because of some urgent matter?" Changyang Zhu Yunxiao stood up and examined Jian Chen up and down. He smiled, "Xiangtian, looks like you've fully recovered from your wounds. Come with me. I just happen to have some matters I want to discuss with you." Jian Chen nodded before following Changyang Zhu Yunxiao toward the floating piece of land. However, as they approached the divine hall at the center, Jian Chen stopped. He said, "Great-grandfather, the scenery in the garden over there is quite nice. Why don't we go discuss there?" With that, Jian Chen flew to the nearby garden without waiting for Changyang Zhu Yunxiao to agree. Looking at Jian Chen's back, Changyang Zhu Yunxiao did not show any displeasure at all. Instead, he smiled slightly and softly murmured, "This kid's rather cautious." Afterward, he flew over as well. Soon after that, Changyang Zhu Xiao, Changyang Yuan Wuji, and Changyang Qing Yunfeng emerged from the central divine hall as well and gathered within the garden's pavilion. "Haha, Xiangtian's done it wonderfully this time. You've actually succeeded in obtaining the saint's fruit in front of so many experts and brought it back to the clan in perfect condition." Exactly. Xiangtian's actions this time were far too outstanding, obtaining the priceless saint's fruit for our Changyang clan. Now that we have the fruit, our clan's strength will definitely skyrocket. Without much time, a saint emperor will be born in our clan. Xiangtian's committed a tremendous contribution. Wrong. It won't be 1 saint emperor, but 2. We've all witnessed Xiangtian's talent. I believe in less than 100 years, Xiangtian will reach saint emperor. Changyang Yuan Wuji and Changyang Qing Yunfeng showered Jian Chen with praises as soon as they arrived. They constantly commended Jian Chen. Changyang Zhu Yunxiao and Changyang Zhu Xiao silently sat on the stone seats. Their faces were expressionless, so it was impossible to tell what they were feeling. Jian Chen's complexion became rather ugly. The meaning behind Changyang Yuan Wuji and Changyang Qing Yunfeng's words was that the fruit was not Jian Chen's but the clan's. Why haven't Qing Yun, Jueri, and Zhang Hua come yet? I've just contacted them, Changyang Qing Yunfeng suddenly asked. Changyang Qing Yun, Changyang Qing Jueri, and Changyang Yuan Zhang Hua appeared at the doorstep of the central divine hall as soon as he said that before heading over in unison. All 7 great elders of the Changyang clan had gathered at that moment. If you managed to miss that long post of mine, CSG now has a Patreon set up, where you can read up to 35 chapters ahead. Chapter 1171. Internal Strife of the Changyang Clan, 1. The great elders all sat in order on the stone seats within the pavilion. Many of them faintly smiled with joy they could not hide. Only Jian Chen was in a very bad mood because he knew what they were going to talk about next would definitely be related to the saint's fruit. Changyang Qing Yun looked around and gently cleared his throat. He said, "Since everyone is here, let's cut to the chase. I believe everyone already knows what we are going to discuss, so let's get straight to it." How do you feel that we should split the saint's fruit? Basically all the experts on the continent know that we, the Changyang clan, have obtained the saint's fruit. In order to prevent a few experts from attacking our clan, since the temptation is too great, we need to use the fruit as soon as possible. Otherwise, won't our losses be severe if it was taken away by someone else? Changyang Qing Yunfeng righteously spoke. That's right, and the appearance of the fruit this time has even led to the collaboration of the Path Lord of Carnal Desires and the 3 Saint Emperors of the Beast God continent. If the 4 of them attack our clan, regardless of the consequences they would face, in an attempt to obtain the fruit, we would end up in deep trouble, said Changyang Yuan Wuji. He was grim. But there's 7 of us and only 1 fruit. How should we split it? Changyang Yuan Zhenghua asked while deep in thought as the light in his eyes flickered. Who else can we give it to? Is there another Saint King at great perfection in our clan other than Qing Yun? In my opinion, the saint's fruit should obviously go to Qing Yun. Only by giving it to him can we use the fruit to its greatest capacity. Changyang Qing Yunfeng clearly stated. Qing Yun has reached great perfection many years ago, and he only lacks a final step before he can reach Saint Emperor. Using the fruit on him is a waste. Changyang Yuan Venghua nonchalantly replied. Changyang Qing Yun's face changed slightly. Before he could say anything, Changyang Qing Yunfeng suddenly stood up and slammed the stone table before him. Although it was extremely tough, the sculpted table was reduced to dust. He angrily said, Venghua, what are you trying to say? Are you saying that Qing Yun is incompetent? Changyang Yuan Zhenghua smiled slightly. Please don't get mad, brother Yunfeng. Qing Yun is the only Saint King at great perfection out of all of us as well as the most powerful member of our clan. I just feel that if we use the fruit on him, we won't be able to use the fruit to its greatest potential. Do you have an even better idea? Changyang Qing Yunfeng asked with a sunken face. Of course. Changyang Yuan Zhenghua smiled confidently and said, Brother Qing Yun only lacks a fortuitous encounter before he can reach Saint Emperor. If we give the fruit to someone else and the worldly phenomena invoked by that individual when they become Saint Emperor is comprehended by Brother Qing Yun, then reaching Saint Emperor obviously won't be a question. That way, wouldn't there be 2 Saint Emperors from a single fruit? You say that easily. If reaching Saint Emperor really was that easy, the 10 protector clans would not have run out of Saint Emperors. Venghua, I feel like you just want the fruit for yourself, Changyang Qing Juri coldly said as he rebuked Changyang Yuan Zhenghua. The great elders argued intensely such that they all became flushed. All that was missing was for them to fight. None of them noticed Jian Chen's pale white face. Everyone! Changyang Zhu Yunshao finally yelled. He calmly said, All you think about is how the saint's fruit will be distributed. You haven't considered just who obtained the fruit at all. The fruit isn't any of ours. It belongs to Shangtian. Correct, Shangtian's contributions in obtaining the fruit were crucial. That's an irrefutable truth. However, if we hadn't intervened in the end, how would he have broken free from the encirclement? And with Shangtian's unprecedented talent, having attained such accomplishments in less than 100 years, his future is unlimited. If he uses a heavenly resource to become a Saint Emperor with his talent, it's not necessarily a good matter either. It's extremely possible that Shangtian won't be able to advance any further after becoming a Saint Emperor through these means, said Changyang Qing Juri. Out of all of us, the person who has the most authority in distributing the fruit is Shangtian. Shangtian, why don't you say what you plan on doing? Changyang Zhu Shao suggested. He too drooled over the saint's fruit inside. After all, it was something that could give birth to Saint Emperors. Jian Chen glanced over the 7 of them and said, Great elders, the arguments today have been so intense. Let's talk about the saint's fruit some other day just in case we fall out with one another. No, we can't leave the saint's fruit hanging around. We need to deal with it as soon as possible. I worry about intruders, a great elder firmly responded. Jian Chen's heart sank. He knew that it was no longer possible to drag things out, so he made up his mind. I'll be honest. When I obtained the fruit, I already had an owner in mind, and it's not me, nor any of you here. Is it the 3 magical beasts? No, the saint's fruit is sacred to the humans. It cannot be consumed by magical beasts. Changyang Qing Yun reacted violently. He suddenly stood up and glared at Jian Chen. No, it's not them, but the Grand Elder of Mercenary City, Senior Tian Jian. I've specifically fought for the fruit for Senior Tian Jian, Jian Chen replied. He no longer had any room for regret now. The garden fell silent. Everyone had become stunned by what Jian Chen had said. No one had ever thought that Jian Chen would actually leave the fruit to the Grand Elder of Mercenary City. No, definitely not. A while later, someone abruptly yelled. Chongyang Qingyun stared at Jian Chen. He was furious as he said, "The saint's fruit only appears once every 40,000 years. How can you give something as valuable as that to an outsider? Jian Chen, you must consider the clan first as a member of the clan. The fruit is just far too important to the clan. When I fought against the countless vengeful spirits, what did you do? What else did you do when Rue Jin, Honglian, Heiyu, and I fought through the encirclement of so many people? I've exchanged the fruit through bloodshed and risking my life, so it would belong to me. Who I decide to give the fruit to has nothing to do with you." Jian Chen also became very straightforward and forceful. He would definitely not hand over the saint's fruit. The faces of the great elders all darkened very much. Even Chongyang Zhu Shao and Chongyang Zhu Yunshao slightly frowned. They could accept it if the saint's fruit was used by any member of the clan, but if Jian Chen actually gave it to an outsider, that would be going too far. Jian Chen turned to Chongyang Zhu Yunshao and said, "Great-grandfather, please send me off. It looks like it is no longer suitable for me to stay in the Protector clan." Chongyang Zhu Yunshao hesitated before nodding. "Xiangtian, you are a member of the Zhu branch, and you are our branch's pride. No matter what happens, we will always stand by your side as long as you don't break the morals and harm the clansmen." With that, Chongyang Zhu Yunshao began casting a secret technique, wanting to open the world gate for Jian Chen to leave. "Wait!" Chongyang Qingyun struck out with his palm, causing the surrounding space to violently shake. He disrupted what Chongyang Zhu Yunshao was trying to do while he coldly stared at Jian Chen. He heavily said, "You can go, but you have to leave behind the saint's fruit. I don't care how much you put into obtaining the fruit, but as a member of the Protector clan, you need to consider the clan with the utmost importance." "I will not be leaving behind the saint's fruit." Jian Chen's voice became icy as well. Fury began to burn inside of him. "Since you're not going to hand over the fruit, I'll come and get it myself." A sharp gleam of light flashed through Chongyang Qingyun's eyes, and he arrived in front of Jian Chen in a flash. He grabbed at the space ring on Jian Chen's finger, wanting to take it. Jian Chen had been prepared long ago. The moment Chongyang Qingyun moved, the Emperor armament appeared in his right hand. Devastating chaotic force surged from the weapon as he swung it toward Chongyang Qingyun's hand with lightning-like speed. The strike was swift, precise, and vicious. It possessed all the power that Jian Chen had been secretly charging up. Chongyang Qingyun was surprised inside. He did not expect Jian Chen to react so quickly, but he was an experienced fighter himself as well. Tremendous amounts of saint force immediately gushed from his hand, and he shifted his movement, striking the face of the sword. Bang! With a muffled sound, the Emperor armament gently resonated. Jian Chen's attack had been nullified by Chongyang Qingyun. However, Jian Chen's attacks did not just stop there. With a twist of his wrist, the Emperor armament danced like a fan to redirect the remaining force before turning into a dark streak of light. It stabbed toward Chongyang Qingyun with unbelievable speed. Chongyang Qingyun remained calm. Extending a finger, a vast amount of world force shot out, colliding with the tip of the sword. With a boom, the pavilion in the garden was split into pieces. Violent ripples of energy shot out in all directions, turning the lovely garden into a mess. Jian Chen uncontrollably took 3 steps back, leaving behind 3 deep footprints. Chongyang Qingyun remained where he was, standing as firmly as a mountain. "Your strength is indeed rather spectacular outside, but it's quite not enough to fight with me," Chongyang Qingyun coldly said. Jian Chen tightly gripped the Emperor armament in his right hand. His presence became greater and greater. Although the disparity between their strength was very great, he was not scared. "Leave behind the saint's fruit and I'll let you leave," Chongyang Qingyun coldly commanded. He needed to obtain the saint's fruit. At this moment, many people flew over from afar. The commotion was just far too great, having alarmed them. If you managed to miss that long post of mine, CSG now has a Patreon set up, where you can read up to 35 chapters ahead. Saint force surged within the fist, causing cracks to appear in the space that was much tougher than the outside world. Changyang Qingyun remained calm and composed. He gently struck out with his left hand and easily nullified the powerful Saint force in Changyang Zhu Yunxiao's hand. The net continued to toward Jian Chen. Jian Chen's presence became extremely powerful and battle intent surged from him. His glare became as sharp as a sword. He did not show any fear against a Saint King at great perfection, quickly stabbing at Changyang Qingyun as a layer of chaotic force revolved around the Emperor armament. Such overconfidence! Changyang Qingyun's lips curled in disdain. The net of energy split into two. A portion wrapped around the Emperor armament while the other continued along the same trajectory toward Jian Chen. Jian Chen's Emperor armament seemed like it had been tightly wrapped up now. Even the luster of the chaotic force was suppressed. Jian Chen did not become flustered. With a violent tremble of his hand, the Emperor armament shook. Streaks of dark light broke free from Changyang Qingyun's suppression and became brighter and brighter. The chaotic force on the Emperor armament was rapidly breaking free from Changyang Qingyun's restraints. At this moment, the other portion of the net had arrived over Jian Chen's head. Just as he was about to become entangled, a streak of golden light shot out from the center of his eyebrows. It became a 3-meter-tall golden tower, which hovered above his head and glimmered with the color of gold. The tip of the tower held back the net. The tower was tightly trapped by the net, but the Emperor armament had finally broken free during this period of time. It glowed with a dark light as an aura of destruction radiated from it far and wide. It alerted many experts who were in seclusion, causing them to open their eyes and emerge. Swish! The sword cut through the air, and with its powerful and devastating might, it actually created a thin black crack in the reinforced space. It stabbed toward Changyang Qingyun with almost unstoppable force. The speed of the sword was so great that it became invisible to the naked eye. All that could be seen was a flicker of darkness. The sword had arrived at Changyang Qingyun's forehead with unbelievable speed. The forehead was the fatal weakness of any expert. It was where their meridian of life was located, so it was the place where their soul resided. Even Saint Kings at great perfection could suffer life-threatening injuries from the soul, and they could even die from it. Jian Chen's strike was aimed at Changyang Qingyun's forehead. He had attacked to kill without showing any mercy at all. Changyang Qingyun's face darkened. Chilling killing intent appeared in his eyes, and when the Emperor armament was only 3 inches away from his forehead, the space around Jian Chen suddenly froze. He was locked in place in his posture of stabbing out with a sword. Even the Emperor armament had come to a halt, forcefully stopped 3 inches away. However, this only lasted for a second. The frozen space was shattered by Jian Chen's chaotic force, but as soon as he regained his mobility, Changyang Qingyun had already arrived by his side. He bellowed out, "You have committed an unforgivable crime, punishable by death, for trying to kill a great elder. As the highest-ranking elder, I, Changyang Qingyun, shall be representing the Changyang clan to punish you." Changyang Qingyun immediately sent a palm strike in Jian Chen's way. Energy surged from his palm and his attack seemed to have engulfed an entire region, causing the space around Jian Chen to become. Jian Chen was grim. His eyes were cold and with a thought, the saint artifact immediately shrunk to the size of a fist and slipped out of the net. It flew over as a golden streak of light and stood in front of Jian Chen like a shield. A rumble immediately erupted when Changyang Qingyun's attack landed on the saint artifact. The power hidden within was far beyond imagination. He blew the saint artifact away with the attack, and the golden tower smashed into Jian Chen, even forcing him to rapidly retreat. Powerful ripples of energy surged in all directions, reducing the garden to nothing. Almost all the exotic flowers and herbs had been reduced to dust. If you managed to miss that long post of mine, CSG now has a Patreon set up, where you can read up to 35 chapters ahead. Chapter 1173. Internal Strife of the Changyang Clan, 3. Jian Chen uncontrollably took over 10 steps back before finally nullifying the powerful force. Just as he stabilized himself, Changyang Qingyun aggressively attacked with his second palm strike. He continued to use his full strength without showing any mercy. With the attack, the space around Jian Chen froze, trapping him once again. Saint Kings at great perfection had already reached the very peak of Saint King. They were only an inch away from becoming a Saint Emperor, and they were the closest existences to Saint Emperor. Chongyang Qingyun possessed an absolute advantage over Jian Chen, who was just a 7th heavenly layer Saint King. This time, Jian Chen could not break through the frozen space in time. All he could do was watch helplessly as Chongyang Qingyun's powerful attack rapidly drew closer. Chaotic force wildly surged within him, having pushed the chaotic body to the limit already. He planned on taking the attack head-on. At this moment, an old but straight figure suddenly appeared in front of Jian Chen. He was Chongyang Zhu Xiao, and energy pulsed from him as tremendous amounts of world force coiled around him. Although his vast presence was not as great as Chongyang Qingyun's aura, he was not much weaker either. He then struck out with his palm, using invisible world force to fend off Chongyang Qingyun's attack. Boom! With a great rumble, terrifying energy ripples played out in a terrifying storm, which caused the entire piece of floating land to violently shake. The energy of the world convulsed. Chongyang Qingyun stood as still as a mountain, remaining where he was, but Chongyang Zhu Xiao trembled gently. The ground where he stood had sunk a little. Chongyang Zhu Xiao, what are you doing? Chongyang Qingyun sharply glared at Chongyang Zhu Xiao. Chongyang Zhu Xiao emotionlessly looked at Chongyang Qingyun. He said without any emotions whatsoever as well, "Qingyun, are you going so far as to lay your hands so heavily on a junior? Xiongtian's a great elder of our clan, moreover." Great elder? Humph. Has there been any great elder who does not consider the clan's development first? He may be a great elder, but he's always been acting selfishly without considering for the clan at all. Is there any use for a great elder like that? From now on, I declare, in the name of the highest-ranking elder, that Chongyang Zhu Xiongtian will be removed of his position as great elder, Chongyang Qingyun coldly announced. You need the agreement of the 7 of us to remove a great elder from his position. Qingyun, you don't have the authority just by yourself, Chongyang Zhu Xiao replied. It doesn't matter if you remove me from the position or not. I'm no longer a member of the Protector Chongyang clan, and from now on, I have no connection to it either, Jian Chen yelled as he struggled in the frozen space. By now, a large number of people had gathered in the distance. The fight in the garden had alerted the entire inner clan. Many people hurried over from all directions, hovering high in the sky as they watched from very far away. They had all been forbidden to get anywhere near the battle by a few great elders through communication techniques, so no one dared to head over. Killing intent filled Chongyang Qingyun's face. He made his way around Chongyang Zhu Xiao and charged at Jian Chen. Qingyun, Xiongtian's a member of my Zhu branch. He cannot be trampled over like this by your Qing branch. Chongyang Zhu Xiao blocked Chongyang Qingyun and clashed several dozen times with him at the speed of lightning. Chongyang Qingyun fell into utter rage after being blocked time and time again. He taunted, Chongyang Zhu Xiao, if you insist of shielding him from his mistakes, don't blame me for not showing you any respect. Show me just how much you've improved in the past few years. The two of them began to fight ferociously. As they fought, they moved from the land to the sky, and then from the sky to a cluster of mountains in the distance. Various creatures were alarmed as the powerful ripples of energy rocked the entire space. Many cracks constantly expanded and constantly healed together. Several mountains had collapsed under their battle. I never thought that Zhu Zhao's strength had already reached the 9th heavenly layer and is about to reach great perfection. It won't be easy if Qingyun wants to defeat Zhu Xiao. Chongyang Qingjuri mumbled. The clansmen all stared at Chongyang Qingyun and Chongyang Zhu Xiao as they fought in panic from afar. None of them knew what was happening. A lot of them felt uneasy when they saw the authoritative great elders fight in such an intense fashion. They all began to whisper in discussion. Juri, Yunfeng, come take down this wrongdoer for me, Chongyang Qingyun called out from afar. The confused clansmen all heard what Chongyang Qingyun had said, which immediately led to a great commotion. Various discussions rang out in all directions, but there were even more sounds of satisfaction made in the direction of Jian Chen. Jian Chen was young, where his actual age was not even a fraction of many of the people present, yet he had actually climbed his way up to a position of a great elder, looming above them all. This had led to the disagreement of many older people long ago, but it had all been suppressed by the great elders to the point that they could not mention it. Yet now, many people unhappy with Jian Chen no longer felt any fear because his wrongdoings had led to a fight between the two great elders. Various complaints constantly rang out. Chongyang Qingjuri and Chongyang Qingyunfeng were all people of the same branch. They did not hesitate at all when they heard what Chongyang Qingyun said and immediately charged toward Jian Chen. Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao sneered and went up to face them. He stopped Chongyang Qingyun. Yunxiao, looks like you want to fight with me. Your strength may have increased, having broken through to the 5th heavenly layer, but you're still not my opponent. It's best if you don't interfere with this matter, just in case we end up falling out, Chongyang Qingyun said. What a joke! You've decided to mistreat the people of my branch so roughly and in such a brazen fashion, yet you want to persuade me to not interfere? Chongyang Zhu Yunfeng stood firm with his decision and was not swayed at all. I have nothing else to say if that's the case. Chongyang Qingyun coldly replied and began fighting with Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao. On another side, Chongyang Qingjuri began to fight Jian Chen as well. However, he was only a Saint King of the 5th heavenly layer, so he was nowhere near Jian Chen's opponent. After just clashing a few times, he lost an arm to Jian Chen and wailed out uncontrollably from the pain. How dare you! The crime for injuring a great elder cannot be forgiven. Wuji, Zhenghua, you two quickly come and capture the traitor of the clan. Chongyang Qingyun noticed the situation over there and furiously called out as he fought Chongyang Zhu Xiao. He was boiling with rage. Chongyang Yuan Wuji and Chongyang Yuan Vanghua hesitated slightly before heading toward Jian Chen in the end. Chongyang Yuan Wuji was the stronger of the two, having reached the 8th heavenly layer of Saint King, while Chongyang Qingjunghua was the weaker one, at the 4th heavenly layer. Jian Chen's pressure immediately increased when the two of them took part in the battle. He quickly fell to a disadvantage. It was rather difficult for Jian Chen to handle them, especially Chongyang Yuan Wuji, who was at the 8th heavenly layer of Saint King. You have gone too far, Yuan and Qing branches. Chongyang Zhu Xiao roared out as he fought Chongyang Qingyun. A violent presence radiated from him as his hair and clothes fluttered despite the absence of wind. Invisible world force in the surroundings rapidly gathered around him. Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao looked at the sky, and he held his right hand as a fist over his head. His body was filled with a wildly domineering presence, as if he was about to challenge the world. A ball of faint white light suddenly appeared where his fist was, before turning white-hot in the blink of an eye. It seemed like a miniature sun, illuminating the surroundings. Founding God's Fist. It's the Founding God's Fist. Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao, why you're actually going to use the Founding God's Fist to deal with me? Chongyang Qingyun paled in fright. He immediately shot back as he hurriedly circled his hands in the air. He created layers of defenses using a secret technique in front of him while Saint Force surged from his body at the same time. It condensed into a layer of armor on him. Chongyang Qingyun and the two great elders of the Yuan branch's expressions changed slightly as well. Chapter 1174. The Founding God's Fist. Yunxiao, you're actually using the Founding God's Fist against your own clansmen. Do you know what you're going right now? Chongyang Qingyun furiously roared as he fought against Chongyang Zhu Xiao. However, what he said was not enough to stop Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao. The Founding God's Fist was a powerful battle skill that bordered a whole different domain, so even with Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao's strength, he needed some time to charge it up. The weather in the surrounding area suddenly began to change. As he charged up the battle skill, the rich energy and world force in the independent world began to move violently, creating storms of energy and kicking dust into the air. The entire floating land gently trembled. The space around Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao began to violently shake. It wildly twisted, obscuring him and making his figure appear bent from time to time. Extremely powerful energy had condensed where his fist was. Transcendence, supreme shielding. As Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao's opponent, Chongyang Qingyun shouted out as well. He used an ancient secret technique, using spatial force to create a spatial obstruction between him and Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao, as if they had been separated by two different worlds. Suddenly, a tremendous pressure appeared. It was so powerful that all the Saint rulers who were watching from afar shuddered unknowingly, and many people below Saint ruler had even collapsed to the ground. Some of the weaker people had even vomited blood. Just the pressure had ruptured their organs and made them heavily injured. The pressure was exceptionally great, far more powerful than other Saint-tier battle skills. Such a skill was extremely rare on the Tian Yuan continent, and only Saint Kings could resist it. Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao bathed in a dazzling light. He seemed like a god, possessing an absolute will. His fist slightly moved toward Chongyang Qing Yunfeng from afar. His fist did not move fast at all. In fact, it could be described as extremely slow. However, as he punched, he seemed to have invoked some mysteries and powerful energies of the world, causing the muffled rumble of thunder to ring through the space. With a single punch, the weather changed and everything fell silent. The punch seemed to have replaced the world, becoming the only existence that moved. It was the most eye-catching thing in the world. The punch seemed to have used all the power in the surroundings. It shot forward with an unstoppable force in the form of an angered dragon. The founding god's fist had already reached the peak of Saint-tier battle skills and had already reached the border of a whole different domain. It was close to transcending the Saint-tier. The fist collided with the spatial barrier from Chongyang Qing Yunfeng first, yet it was unable to stop it at all. The fist easily made its way through, causing the space there to violently shake. A region of it had already shattered, disintegrating into darkness, but it recovered very quickly. The battle skill was not weakened after making it through the barrier. It continued to surge toward Chongyang Qing Yunfeng with great might. Chongyang Qing Yunfeng became extremely stern. He had already been locked onto by the battle skill, so it could not be dodged easily, especially since it had virtually surpassed the Saint-tier. He could only take it head-on, unable to flee. The punch came in contact with the layers of defenses cast down through secret techniques with an earth-shaking commotion. It broke through all obstructions and landed on Chongyang Qing Yunfeng's body mercilessly. Spurt! Blood immediately sprayed from Chongyang Qing Yunfeng's mouth as mist. He was completely blown away, passing through several mountains along the way before finally becoming lodged in another mountain. There were no signs of movement from him for quite a long time. Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao, I definitely won't let you off easily for being so heavy-handed against a great elder. Chongyang Qing Yun furiously yelled again. His presence quickly skyrocketed, and he began to use his full strength regardless of the consequences. He blew Chongyang Zhu Xiao away with a single palm strike before flying toward Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao as a furious streak of light. The light around Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao was extraordinarily blinding. After the attack, the might of the battle skill had no dispersed yet. He only stared at Chongyang Qing Yun in interest with no fear at all. Afterward, he punched toward Chongyang Qing Yun in the exact same manner. With the punch, everything fell silent. It seemed to have become the only existence in the world, possessing an unbelievable amount of force. Chongyang Qing Yun showed no emotion in his icy cold eyes. Although Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao's battle skill had surpassed Saint-tier, it was still limited by his strength after all. It was not enough to threaten Chongyang Qing Yun. Soul-obliterating palm strike. Chongyang Qing Yun sneered. He struck his hand against the founding god's fist, and a pressure descended from the surroundings. It was also a Saint-tier battle skill, except it was nowhere as great as the founding god's fist, but with his strength at great perfection, Chongyang Qing Yun could use it instantaneously. The two Saint-tier battle skills collided in the air and a great boom erupted. Terrifying ripples of energy dissipated into the surroundings, almost causing the space there to shatter. The 18 divine halls high up in the sky had become even more consolidated now, holding the whole space in place. The two battle skills were equally matched and dispersed at the same time. Although the two battle skills varied in base power, the disparity in their caster's cultivation level was just far too great, which was why this difference in power could be made up. Before Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao could recover from casting the battle skill, Chongyang Qing Yun arrived in front of him with a flash. He hit Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao with a palm strike, which passed through the brilliance of the founding god's fist to land on his chest. Spurt! A cloud of blood shot from Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao's mouth and blood immediately drained from his face. He was blown far away by Chongyang Qing Yun's attack, now heavily injured. I will never forgive you, Chongyang Qing Yun. Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao was utterly enraged. He charged over from afar as his eyes boiled with killing intent. Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao was his great-grandson and more importantly, the pride of the Zhu branch. Chongyang Zhu Zhao's anger had reached an irrevocable level after watching Chongyang Qing Yun injure Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao. Chongyang Zhu Zhao's presence rapidly skyrocketed, reaching his peak very soon. It seemed like he was about to use the founding god's fist. Chongyang Qing Yun glared at Chongyang Zhu Xiao and called out. Chongyang Zhu Xiao, Your Zhu branch has the founding god's fist, but my Qing branch has the nurture of spring. If we really do clash, the people who'll get hurt will only be the clansmen. Do you want to become labeled as an eternal traitor? Chongyang Qing Yun's eyes were filled with fear. He was able to dismiss Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao's founding god's fist, but he needed to face the same battle skill cast by Chongyang Zhu Xiao carefully. A gleam of light flickered through Chongyang Zhu Xiao's eyes. After a moment of deliberation, he gave up on the thought of using the battle skill. Jian Chen's battle against the two great elders of the Yuan branch was intense. He was littered with wounds and very heavily injured. Chongyang Yuan Venghua was also covered in many slashes from a sword. He was also heavily injured. If you managed to miss that long post of mine, CSG now has a Patreon set up, where you can read up to 35 chapters ahead. Chapter 1175. Descent of the Bright Moon Divine Hall of the two great elders from the Yuan branch. Chongyang Yuan Zhenghua was weaker than Jian Chen, but Chongyang Yuan Wuji was an 8th heavenly layer Saint King. He was the 3rd strongest person of the clan and his strength completely surpassed Jian Chen's. Every single strike of his possessed mountain-shattering force, and he would use ancient secret techniques from time to time. It was very difficult for Jian Chen cope with, so he fell to a disadvantage. All the heavy injuries on Jian Chen had basically come from Chongyang Yuan Wuji, but the chaotic body gifted him with great vitality and battle prowess at the same time. His strength did not decrease at all despite his injuries, but he could not last for too long either. Bang! With a muffled sound, Chongyang Yuan Wuji's palm landed on Jian Chen's chest, launching him far away. The attack was very powerful. Jian Chen only stopped after flying several thousand meters and after colliding into a mountain. His entire chest had caved in and most of his ribs were broken. Jian Chen clenched his teeth and chaotic force quickly circulated within him. He recovered just as quickly, but even with that, his speed of recovery was far slower than the rate he was sustaining injuries. Jian Chen glanced around and saw that Chongyang Zhu Xiao and Chongyang Qing Yun were still fighting far away. Tremendous ripples of energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings, causing whole clusters of mountains to tremble. On the other hand, there were no signs of movement from Chongyang Zhu Yunxiao after he had been blown away by Chongyang Qing Yun. Jian Chen's face was extremely ashen. He was completely at a disadvantage right now. He could rival 7th heavenly layer Saint Kings if he fought by himself, but he was helpless against Chongyang Yuan Wuji no matter how hard he tried. As a great elder, Chongyang Yuan Wuji knew many powerful ancient secret techniques, so no ordinary Saint King could compare to him. The independent space was sealed as well, and it could not be opened without the corresponding technique. He was now trapped here and unable to leave. Energy pulsed up ahead as Chongyang Yuan Wuji aggressively flew over. He glared fixedly at Jian Chen, as if he was afraid that Jian Chen would run away. Greed was evidently plastered across his face. Now that Qing Yun's busy with Zhu Xiao, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me. I'll eat the fruit as soon as I get it, and he can't do anything to me. All he can do is watch from the side. I'll be able to reach the supreme realm of Saint Emperors very soon and become the strongest of the protector clans. Chongyang Yuan Wuji laughed maniacally inside. He could basically taste the moment he would become a Saint Emperor, but he needed to suppress his wild excitement, or he would have begun laughing aloud. But this brat's talent is very great. God damn it, Jian Chen swore inside. The plan could not adapt to the changing situation. He had never imagined it would end up like this. It was already night outside right now. A full moon hung high in the sky, casting down beautiful moonlight. A silver-white divine hall silently descended from outer space before stopping above the entrance to the Chongyang clan's independent space. The beautiful Yu Yu, dressed in white, stood on top of the roof as she held the moon god's scepter that Fairy Hao Yu had given her. Suddenly, Yu Yu raised the scepter and the gem embedded within it began to shine with dense moonlight. At the same time, the full moon in the sky suddenly grew brighter. It actually began to shine with unprecedented brightness, as if it was resonating with Yu Yu's scepter. The two of them seemed to be calling out to each other from far away. I never thought that you'd have a helper, but inside the Protector clan, it's useless even if you bring a Saint King at great perfection. Chongyang Yuan Wuji sneered back inside the independent space. The energy around him surged and rushed toward Jian Chen. Tai Ta's eyes slide over. A golden axe appeared in his hand, and he yelled, "Mysteries of war, destruction." A supreme battle intent suddenly appeared. It was enough to affect everyone's mind. At that moment, all the clansmen who were watching from afar lost any bravery to fight as their morale collapsed. All of them shivered under the battle intent as they looked at Tai Ta in dread. At that moment, Tai Ta seemed to have become an undefeatable war god in the eyes of many of them. Even saint rulers had lost their courage to fight in front of Tai Ta. An extremely dazzling streak of light shot through the air, heading toward Chongyang Yuan Wuji like a bolt of lightning along with the battle intent. Chongyang Yuan Wuji blanked out. The sudden battle intent had affected him slightly as well, but he could suppress the effects with his strength, so he recovered very quickly. Seeing the golden axe flying over, he wanted to dodge, but discovered that it had already locked onto his presence. He hurried and used an ancient secret technique and managed to block Tai Ta's attack, but the powerful force launched him far away. What is this presence? Chongyang Qing Yun and Chongyang Zhu Xiao stopped fighting in the distance. They glanced at Tai Ta as doubt and surprise flooded their faces. The mysteries of war, destruction. Isn't this a powerful battle skill used by the war god of the 100 races, Ergens, in ancient times, the one mentioned in the records? The records say that Ergens had used it to destroy a small portion of the entire continent with a single swing, and over 10 saint emperors died to it. Chongyang Qing Yun stared blankly as disbelief flooded his face. Chongyang Zhu Xiao stared at Tai Ta as Tai Ta bathed in golden light from afar. He murmured, surrounded in golden light and able to give off such a unique battle intent. Is he? That's the war god of the 100 races. No wonder the 100 races had launched a large-scale invasion of our continent. That had never happened before after all, so it turns out to be all connected to the war god. Chongyang Qing Yun suddenly called out. He immediately guessed Tai Ta's identity and became both fearful and surprised. Even with his mental fortitude, he struggled to remain calm. The war god of the 100 races was just far too famous. His prestige was so great that even saint emperors would pale upon hearing about him. After all, he was a sovereign-like figure that had surpassed saint emperor. In ancient times, just the amount of saint emperors that fell by his hand was innumerable. Only other experts at the same level of cultivation could match up against him. However, Chongyang Qing Yun realized Tai Ta's strength very soon. He immediately calmed down very much and killing intent began to flow from his eyes in an undisguised manner. He said, Zhu Xiao, the war god of the 100 races has reappeared. We may not have been part of the matters during the ancient times, but you understand very well from the records. You know what you should be doing at this moment. Chongyang Zhu Xiao frowned heavily. He stared at Tai Ta fixedly as the light within his eyes flickered. Before the war god has fully matured, kill him immediately and remove the future danger. Otherwise, the Tian Yuan continent will become doomed. The tragedy of the ancient times will be repeated, but this time, we don't have an expert like Mo Tianyun to stop him. Zhu Xiao, let's forget our disagreements for now and kill the war god together, Chongyang Qing Yun coldly said. He charged toward Tai Ta first after he finished speaking. Rumble! At this moment, a deafening boom rang out from the sky, causing the entire clan to violently shake. If you managed to miss that long post of mine, CSG now has a Patreon set up, where you can read up to 35 chapters ahead. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.